bring you guys on. You're live.
What is up, fight fans, and welcome to a brand new show right here on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source for news and entertainment in the world of mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. It's our live UFC 255 weigh-in show. I'm your host, Jim Greasehaber, pumped to be joined today by Jeff Kane, MMA Weekly senior correspondent. You can see by the beards, we're not fooling anyone, so we might as well just say senior correspondent Jeff. And with Scott Peterson on site, we're the sexy guys in beards club today for UFC 255.
100%. And we're both rocking it well. And I'm sure Scotty's off camera, but his beard is nice right now.
Yeah, he's got the Duck Dynasty beard thing going. It's unbelievable. You know, when he's wearing a mask and you can't see it, he's that guy that comes down, the beard comes way down past like the ZZ Top almost. He's getting there. But Jeff, we got a big fight card coming up, and a lot of people are saying, hey, this isn't a big time pay-per-view. And I hate to use the word casuals, but, you know, there are a lot of big-time fight fans who know what this fight card truly is all about. We got two title fights at the top of the card. Valentina Shevchenko, one of the top fighters pound for pound in the entire world, against Jennifer Maia, and Davison Figueiredo, the new king at 125 pounds, trying to cement his status and defend that belt against Alex Perez. Two very good fights at the top of this card, two title fights, two champions looking to hold on. Valentina already a legend, and then Figueiredo looking to become one.
Oh, 100%. Two title fights. I don't know how people complain. Plus, I'm not a big fan of people complaining about fight cards until the fight cards happen. On Sunday, we can all complain and say about how good or bad this fight card is. But right now, we don't know what's going to happen. And the more I've driven into this card, my excitement level has grown. You know, the two title fights, the two number one contender bouts, Platinum, Mike Perry, and Dirty Bird. There's a lot of good fights on this card.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You mentioned Mike Perry and the Dirty Bird, Tim Means. I've known Tim for years, since he was training at Power MMA with my guys Ryan Bader and CB Dollaway, with Aaron Simpson way back in the day. And, you know, Robbie Lawler was actually there too, ironically, the guy he replaced on this card. And when you saw the Lawler fight against Mike Perry, when you saw that announced, you're like, oh, man, fight of the night. There's a brawl. And then Robbie Lawler's unable to make it. And the Dirty Bird gets his way into there, and it's a different type of fight with Mike Perry for sure, but two longtime veterans with a lot of fans, that's going to be a good one. Caitlin Chukagian and Cynthia Calvillo, who's back from the positive corona test a few weeks back. Shogun, who was on this card. Alan Joban making his return on this card. Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval, the two Brandons going to battle in the prelims main event at flyweight in a number one contenders fight. There are a lot of good fights on this card.
Yeah, and Shogun Hu and Paul Craig are going to run that one back. Split decision
Craig,
the first time around. I mean, it's I don't really see a matchup that I don't like on this fight card. To be honest with you, we're just going to have to see how it plays out. You know, I mean, the Mike Perry and Means matchup, that's a recipe for excitement. But we'll see how it happens. Late notice fight. You know, opponent changes, but I have a hard time not believing they're going to go at it immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, look, fighters understand right now, we're in a pandemic, there are no fans, you're in the apex, the UFC's done an incredible job. If you didn't see my interview here on MMA Weekly with Dana White at the end of August, it went by fast, but Dana talking about how the UFC's been able to power through it. It's a lot harder, though, for the fighters, because when they're on Fight Island or when they're in Vegas, the UFC staff's in a bubble, everything's controlled environment, but for the fighters, day in and day out, they still have their lives, their other stuff they have going on, their kids if they have them, going to the gym and training. And, you know how MMA gyms are. If one person in the gym gets it that you're training with, odds are that everyone's going to get it. But, you know, you haven't had too many instances of fighters dropping off cards because of coronavirus. And I'm talking, you know, relatively speaking, so percentage-wise, very few. And to me, that's amazing because they're not in the controlled environments or bubbles and they're still living their everyday lives. But that's one thing I said from the beginning of the pandemic is fighters and gyms know how to stay clean and safe and sanitized because of things like staff and MRSA. So I'm still amazed that the UFC's been able to go straight through. College football's canceled games now. Major League Baseball had its fair share of troubles, but what an unbelievable job by the UFC. And for fighters, they know, Jeff, what an opportunity this is to get more viewers and more people knowing who they are. A year that I think we got a problem with Jeff's connection. That's Jeff Kane.
I got
MMA
you right
Weekly.
back.
I'm Jim Greasehaber. You back, Jeff?
Yeah, I got you right back. You just broke up
Yeah.
for just a second. Yeah, throwing a monkey wrench in. But the UFC, I felt from the beginning was uniquely situated to handle the pandemic because, first of all, the USADA testing, we're used to drug testing. We're used to medical evaluations before weigh-ins, to get medical clearance before you even show up at the event. And it's also uniquely situated to switch on the fly. You know, we're used to having fights drop off of fight cards with injuries and a slew of reasons. And so I felt like for the UFC, above all other sports, they were uniquely qualified to deal with the pandemic where other sports were not. And we've seen that play out. Other sports are having a really hard time with it, and UFC just rolling on.
Yeah, and the toughness of the athletes. Obviously, it goes without saying that when you get locked in a cage with someone until one person wins and one person loses, you never question their toughness. But in life in general, their discipline, their drive, their focus to maintain things like weight, to stay in shape in between fights, to keep themselves safe, it really is. It speaks volumes about not only the company from the top down, but every single fighter who's been, putting themselves in potentially harm's way to train and stay ready. And look, it's their livelihood, it's their income, it's everything. But just a really impressive run by the UFC and a really impressive year. And these two fights at the top of this card with the two belts on the line at flyweight, both of them on the men's and women's side with Figueiredo, who looks to be one of the most dominating fighters in the UFC right now with what he did to Benavidez. And it's a shame. I will never see him against Henry Cejudo because Henry is not cutting, I believe, to 125 again for anything less than a 7-figure payday. And that's not coming against Figueiredo. But, to see him, the only way to really judge a champion is by their level of competition. Perez is an unproven guy. Look, I've seen a lot of guys and known a lot of guys. Henry Cejudo got his first title shot way too soon. John Moraga might have gotten his a little too soon. At 125, there were really not that many guys lined up to fight Mighty Mouse, and that's the same problem with the division now. It's thin in terms of overall numbers and talent at the top. So when you're truly measuring the greatness of a champion, fair or unfair, you do it based upon the caliber of competition. So when you would compare Mighty Mouse to Anderson Silva, to George St. Pierre, to Amanda Nunes for that matter. And you talk about some of the all-time great champions, you have to judge them in terms of the competition. So I'm anxious to see how Figueiredo does against Perez. Perez, a very good fighter, but again, he's going to be judged by the level of competition, and in a division that's pretty empty, that's going to be hard to do. So he's almost got to go out and completely dominate every opponent to be in that pound for pound conversation.
Oh, I agree. He has to do that. He's got a good resume right now. But like you said, you're going to always be judged on the level of competition. And unfortunately for him, it is a thin division right now, but it gets to be built off of him. He gets to kind of set the standard now that those other guys are gone. And what he did to Benavidez twice is it was incredible. You just don't see people do that to Joseph Benavidez. And so Figueiredo's kind of making his own mark now, but it's like you hear champions say it in the past over and over. It's one thing to win the title. It's another thing to defend it.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you're from a place that's one of the most dangerous places on earth for both land and sea animals, and you grow up eating things like tortoise and bird eggs, and a great story by Brett Okamoto about that. But it's just one of those things where you grow up in an environment like that and you're fighting off wild animals and people are fighting, and you've been, a guy who's done construction and carpentry and deep sea fishing and all these things just to survive. You're doing well in life when you're a fighting champion, even though you're fighting for a living and everything's on the line every time you go in there. His background is so unique to prepare him for this. Nothing's going to faze him.
Yeah, I agree. He's not going to get rattled. But I agree with what you said earlier. For him to set his mark, he can't just go out and get by. He can't just go out and get by in a thin division and expect to go down as one of the greats or get in that pound for pound talk. He does have to go out and dominate people the way that he did Benavidez. Now, we've seen him do that. It's just a question of, can he do that against a guy that we don't know a ton about? And we'll see tomorrow night.
Yeah, and he's already beaten another former champion. And granted, a Titan FC champion is not a UFC champion, but Tim Elliott, he's already choked him out. He's finished John Moraga, a former title contender in the division. And again, just the TKO and then the submission back-to-back, doing it both ways against just one of the toughest guys you'll ever see get in the cage, and Joseph Benavidez. And not for nothing, 99% of the people in the world wanted Benavidez to win both of those fights and finally get that UFC gold around his waist. So Figueiredo did it with the whole world against him, his back against the wall, all the stuff that happened in the first fight, the accidental cut and all that stuff. But he came out in the second fight and was even more dominant against Jiu-Jitsu. And Joe's my buddy, but I mean, even Joe would admit he has not been he has not been handled like that by any opponent. And Figueiredo did it twice. So that really speaks volumes. We've talked about that. And that's all he can do is beat the guys in front of him. He did lose to Jussier Formiga, though, and that's a guy who would have a claim to a title shot, and he's been at the top of the division, so there's another fight to make down the line there. I can't really say that Moreno and Royval is definitely the number one contender fight, but they're top 5 and at the top of the division, too, whoever wins that fight. So Figueiredo, with everything he's been through in his life, he's not a young guy. People tend to think that, hey, the guy's new to fight fans. He's young. He's not young. He's 32 years old. His time is now. He's not coming into his prime. He's not coming into his right now.
Oh, I think that 32 though is where most professional athletes peak. That's their early 30s, or in my opinion, and I'm talking across the board, from fighting to football to everything except for maybe gymnastics. You know that. So I think he's coming into his prime right
about
now.
Half that for female gymnastics.
Yes, exactly. So I think he's coming into his prime right now. You're right. He's not young. A lot of people may not know who he is, but they should really know who he is, because he's gone out. And I agree that in the second fight with Benavidez, he erased all doubt from the first fight. You know, the first fight, there was questions. I'm a big Joseph Benavidez fan. I've known Joseph for a long time. I was pulling for him in both of those fights. I'll admit it. And to see him lose like that was kind of heartbreaking, but it was also kind of passing on the torch, because Joseph had been in that division for so long, been at the top of that division for so long. And then, you know, his era, I don't know that he'll ever get back to a title fight, but what he did, what Formiga did to him in the second fight, completely just erased any doubt of the first fight, because you could make a lot of excuses after that first fight. There was no excuses after the second fight.
No, nothing. And there's always, you know, a bad matchup for a fighter, and they're not a bad matchup for anybody else. And then you have guys who look so dominant against one guy, and, you know, and against someone else, they don't look the same. And, you know, sometimes you go through a spell like Cody Garbrandt did, and now you think he's back, and things like that happen. But, you know, and a guy like Perez, he's a Mexican fighter. He's an All-American wrestler in college, not at a major school, at West Hills College, Lenmore, but an All-American wrestler nonetheless. He's good on the ground, jiu-jitsu-wise. He can box. He presents a unique skill set in this fight against Figueiredo as well. And when you look at what he's done, he beat Jussier also. He's got some big wins. He lost by TKO to Benavidez. If you're looking at common opponents, there are your two, Jussier and Joseph Benavidez. But he's a guy who, look, I mean, Perez is a legitimate contender. Would he have gotten a shot in any other division at his point in his career? Doesn't matter, right? It is what it is. He gets the shot, and he has a chance to make his own history here this weekend.
Well, I mean, you don't turn down those fights. When opportunity knocks, you answer the door. And getting back to what we were talking about earlier with the pandemic has allowed a lot of fighters to jump up in ranks, skip over people because they're ready to fight. Now, that's not the case with Perez, but I mean, it's a very interesting matchup. It's hard for me to see how that fight plays out, but we know that he's going to get pressured, and I'm interested to see how he responds to that early in that fight.
All right, let's see who's on the scale now and what the weight is.
124 and a half.
124 and a half, the official weight for the title challenger, Alex Perez.
There's Alex Perez right there on the scale, 124 and a half championship weight, Jeff. And, you know, when a guy's going first, they time it out. You know they're ready, and right on point, right on weight. Good job by Perez and his team.
Oh, I agree. He's on weight. First one to step on the scales. I like.
All right, next fighter to the scale of the UFC's welterweight division, Alan Jouban.
Alan Jouban coming on. Did I say it wrong, or did John Anik get a name wrong? No way. But I like Jouban. It's like the more French side. I've seen Alan Jouban over the years, Jeff. We all have, in some great fights, and it's good to see him getting back in there.
Yeah, it is good to see him getting back in there. And a lot of, with these two title fights and two quote unquote number one contender matchups, some of these fights are getting overlooked, and this is a guy you do not want to overlook.
No, and he hasn't fought since April of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Take on Jared Gooden.
170 and a half, the official weight for Alan Jouban.
7.5. John says on the pronunciation, because I mean, he's just really, since Goldie left, stepped into his zone and became a play guy. Not that he was, but and also partner deputy guys like Joe Rogan, Dominic Cruz and DC, missed beat. was no credit to him. But Alan Joban, getting back to him, I believe he's some great fights. I'm trying to remember the one I was at in person at MGM and Garden. This is way back.
All right, next fighter to the scale. You can see it compete live on pay-per-view tomorrow night in the UFC's welterweight division. Tim the Dirty Bird Means.
All right, and here comes the Dirty Bird, Jeff. I've known Tim Means a long time. Great with the jiu-jitsu, extra over the summer. Tim Means stepping in for Robbie Lawler against Platinum Mike Perry.
171 pounds, the official weight for Tim Means.
The Dirty Bird, who of course spent time in jail as a young kid, said fighting saved his life, Jeff, and he's been a great fighter and so entertaining for the fans over the years.
All right, next fighter to the scale, also competing live on pay-per-view tomorrow night in the UFC Women's Flyweight Division, the number 4 ranked contender, Cynthia Calvillo.
Cynthia Calvillo making her return to the octagon. Just recently got sick and was unable to face Lauren Murphy late last month. Says undisclosed reason. I had thought it was coronavirus for some reason, but she was replaced by Lilia Shakirova, and that one didn't go well against Lauren Murphy. But Calvillo taking on Caitlin Chookagian with the purple hair this weekend.
$124.5, the official weight for Cynthia Calvillo.
124.5 for Calvillo. Gets back up there for a couple of pictures. Anxious to see her fight, Jeff. She always brings it.
Oh, she brings it 100%. She's somebody that I've been high on for a while, and now that she's getting to these fights that are going to be meaningful and getting her to a title fight. It's unfortunate about what happened with the Murphy fight, but I look forward to seeing her on Saturday and seeing what she can do in the division. I'm a big fan of this girl right here.
Yeah, wins over Jessica
All right, next fighter to the
Casey
scale. She is
in
the
her last
UFC
three
Women's
fights.
Flyweight Champion, set to make the
Marina
fourth
Rodriguez.
defense of her title here tomorrow night live on
Here
pay-per-view.
comes Valentina
Shevchenko.
right here, defending her belt this weekend. And what, Jennifer Maia, the next in line to face Valentina. What can't she do? She's absolutely amazing, Jeff.
Oh, this is going to be an exciting fight because Jennifer's going to bring the fight. She takes the fight straight. She's, she comes from that shootbox camp where she's going to bring it to you. It's going to be interesting to see how Valentina responds to that. I think I know how she's going to respond to that, but we'll see tomorrow night. This girl right here, in my opinion, is a step ahead of everyone in the division.
And a black belt in Muay Thai, which is something that Valentina doesn't see very often in her fights. Here's Valentina on the scale. Ripped, look at her. She's a beast.
She always is.
124.5, the official weight for the champion, Valentina Shevchenko.
She's a very, very nice person, a very cool, easy to talk to. She's got an awesome personality. Great champion. And her sister, of course, competing as well. But just an unbelievable
to the scale. She
opportunity
is
for
the number 15
Shevchenko to
ranked
add to
UFC
that
Women's
string of
Flyweight
defenses.
contender, Antonina Shevchenko.
And here is her sister, right on cue. Antonina's also that her sister is, and her to fight on the same card as her sister, which is cool, against Ariana Lipski. And this is, of course, that women's flyweight also.
That's a big shadow.
So we've already seen Perez weigh in, Valentina weigh in, Tim Means weigh in, Cynthia Calvillo weigh in, and here comes Antonina Shevchenko. Looking for 125 here, or under.
125 even.
125 even. She could go up to 126, being a non-title fight. But Antonina Shevchenko, Jeff Kane, weighs in at 125 on the dot.
All the Russian you're getting today, Heidi.
I find it, I always think it's interesting when you look at those two sisters and how it is to live.
Our next fighter to the scale, he is the man around which this card was built, the UFC Men's Flyweight Champion, Davison Figueiredo.
Here he is, Davison Figueiredo, stepping to the scale, got the signature blonde hair from Brazil, 32 years of age, won the belt in his last fight against Joseph Benavidez. Missed weight the first time, of course, and then there was the incidental cut, but no doubt after that last one when he made weight and finished Benavidez by submission to become the king at 125. Henry Cejudo had vacated the belt after taking it from Mighty Mouse and defending it against TJ Dillashaw, who had come down a long time ago. But Figueiredo has given the division some clarity at the top and looking ripped for his title defense against Alex Perez, who's already weighed in at 124.5.
125 even. 125, the official weight for the champion.
We got a title fight.
Figueiredo.
We do have a title fight just on the mark. Just on the mark. Looks completely ripped. He looks drained a little bit, but like you said, he missed weight 2 fights ago. This isn't an easy cut for him, but we do have a title fight. Main event is intact.
Yep, of course, trained at Alpha Male for a couple years, has his own team now. He's been a bricklayer, a hairdresser, a sushi chef, and a deep-sea fisherman. How about that for a resume?
All right, next fighter to the scale. She is the number 3 ranked women's flyweight in the world, challenging for the UFC Flyweight Championship tomorrow night, Jennifer Maia.
We are just about set to lock in our co-main event and second title fight. Jennifer Maia stepping on the scale. We just lost our feed, it looks like a little bit. There it goes. The wonders of modern technology. Jennifer Maia.
124.5, the official weight for the challenger, Jennifer Maia.
There it is,
And
Jeff.
that makes
We
both
got
title
2.
fights official for UFC 255.
Also a boxer.
Are official.
Jennifer Maia, a professional boxer, a black belt in Muay Thai. Unique set of challenges for Valentina Shevchenko, who has dominated so many fighters.
To the UFC's middleweight
Valentina being a great
division,
Muay Thai fighter. Doesn't often see another great Muay Thai fighter. We touched on it a little bit ago, but we'll pick that thought up in just a second as we get set for another fighter to be weighing in here. And me with my blabbermouth, I missed the name.
And the mask make it hard to tell.
Yeah.
even. 185, the official weight for Jordan Wright.
Jordan Wright at 185 taking on Joaquin Buckley. And this is, Joaquin Buckley brings the dynamite. We know that. So this is going to be an exciting fight.
Yeah, it's got the makings to be an exciting fight. Sure, it's got the makings of possibly being a short fight.
Yeah, it's a great point. A very short fight. And see who's coming up next here. And just like always, the UFC running right through the weigh-ins. There's no crowd there. These are the official weigh-ins. Of course, there are no ceremonial weigh-ins.
Middleweight division. Next up, right now. Dustin Stoltzfus.
Dustin Stoltzfus, middleweight on the early prelims against Kyle Dawkins. Looking for 185, anywhere up to 186 here for Stoltzfus. This is great. I love having John Anik say the names first.
It definitely helps me. You're talking about Alan. I call him Alan Joban. That's the Kentucky accent for you.
And
no
that's what
French
John
in there
said, so I'm going
at
with you
all.
guys. Throw your comments up there.
184.5, the official weight for Dustin Stoltzfus.
Stoltzfus at 184.5. So if you're watching us with us live here on MMA Weekly YouTube or Facebook, welcome. This is a new show we're doing. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Kane, Scott Peterson on site. I'm showing my age there. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But
all right, next fighter to the scale, also making his UFC debut here tomorrow night in the welterweight division, Louis Cosce.
Louis Cosce, the first fight on the card against Sasha Palatnikov. Oh, he's got the ink done right. Look at that.
Oh. It's always interesting to see how fighters do in their UFC debut.
170 even. 170, the official weight for Louis Cosce.
So far, everybody's made weight, 170 even. Of course, last week I did the interview with Eric Anders. He missed weight, wasn't feeling healthy, and that was a shame. But we haven't had many instances of missed weights. It's been even more of a higher percentage of people making weight in the COVID era, Jeff. So I think overall,
next fighter to the scale, top 15 in the light heavyweight division, and charged with kicking off the pay-per-view main card tomorrow, Paul Bearju Craig.
Yeah, it's
see. Who did he
interesting to
say
see
now?
that.
Paul Craig.
Paul Craig, yes. What you were saying about we've seen most people making weight, and that's kind of weird because I thought that there would be a problem because of training partners, gym time, and just the things that the pandemic has presented. And we've seen fighters professionally. I don't know if they've just gotten healthier. I've gotten focused during the pandemic for sure.
Me too. Nothing will focus you like having the kids home.
No, isn't that the truth?
205.5, the official weight for Paul Craig.
205.5, the official weight for Paul Craig. Of course, running it back with Shogun here. And, you know, nobody wants to see Shogun get messed up. But this looks like a fight where Craig could, I mean, Shogun better be careful because he could get messed up pretty bad by Paul Craig. And for Paul Craig to take the next steps that he needs to take, he needs to do that to Shogun in this fight.
100%. I mean, Shogun's definitely in the twilight of his career. I mean, I expect him to walk away at any time. Could be tomorrow night, could be the next fight. I don't want to speculate on that, but we're definitely at the end of his.
All right, next up in the UFC's welterweight division, making his debut tomorrow night, Sasha Palatnikov.
Extensive damage, but Paul Craig's going to have to finish him and do so in exciting fashion. He needs to.
Yeah, split draw last time out.
I know.
Crazy, right? Remember that fight?
Yes. But I mean, where Shogun is in his career, if you're on the rise and you face him, you've got, that's a fight you have to finish.
I mean, you're right. And Shogun, a benchmark here, and they keep trying to do that to guys like Glover Teixeira, and he keeps putting himself back in the title picture. Shogun capable anytime of a vintage Shogun performance.
170.5, the official weight for Sasha Palatnikov.
Sasha Palatnikov, 170.5. So that fight's set against Louis Cosi at welterweight, our first fight on the card.
We've had 13 fighters weigh in so far, so we're just over half.
Also making his debut in the UFC's welterweight division tomorrow, Jared Night Train Gooden.
Speaking of a guy who comes in with an opportunity in his debut to face a named fighter like Alan Jouban, Jared Gooden with a golden opportunity for a lot of fans to see him and to create a future for himself in the UFC.
And with nothing to lose. You know, I feel like he's got a good name in his debut. He's got nothing to lose. The only thing he has to worry about is going out and putting on a good performance. Win or lose, I don't think it's going to hurt him.
171, the official weight for Jared Gooden.
A big win.
171, he's good to go. Usually you'll have a whole bunch of fighters weigh in the beginning, then we'll get a little bit of a lull and see a lot at the end. They have plenty of time still, Jeff, to weigh in. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Kane, Scott Peterson on site, MMA Weekly, UFC 255 live weigh-in show. Thanks for being with us. Hey, ask us your questions. Put them up. You know, Jeff will answer them. Jeff will answer a lot more of them than I can. He's been around forever and done a great job. But, hey, hit him up. Hit Jeff up. Hit me up. We'll answer your questions. And we'll see, you know, what we can do here for you on the show. We're here to serve you, here to take you inside the UFC Apex for UFC 255 tomorrow night. Figueiredo, Perez, Shevchenko, Maia, 2 title fights in the flyweight divisions of the UFC.
The most exciting, action-packed divisions. You're not going to see more output than you are out of these 2 weight classes. Joe.
A little bit of a lull in the action here, and we were talking about Shogun Rua and Paul Craig, and obviously that last fight was something. And Shogun,
all right, next fighter to the scale in the UFC's middleweight division.
We'll pick that up in a minute. That whole era of greats at 205, when Jon Jones first asserted his dominance in that division, beating legend after legend. Shogun in that group, of course, but that era, the transition from Chuck and Tito to the Shogun, Machida, Rashad Evans, I mean, just a great group of fighters. And Shogun was the best at one point in time.
On 2 continents.
That's a great point. Talking to the Pride days, too.
185.5, the official weight for Kyle Daukaus.
Kyle Daukaus and Dustin Stoltzfus is official at middleweight. Second fight on the card, so our first 2 fights are official. Our 2 title fights are official.
And going back to Shogun just for a minute, because he's had such a legendary career, he was the first kind of Pride guy to come over here and actually back up what they did in Japan. You saw a lot of guys come over Crow Cop and take losses immediately. Vandalay, Shogun was a guy who did lose early, but then came back and re-solidified himself as one of the top 205-pound fighters in the world. probably ever. So it's interesting that Shogun, I mean, it just shows that he's one of the few guys that's been able to rise to the top in both organizations.
That's a great point, Jeff Kane. And you know what? When you look at Mauricio Shogun Rua, and he's 38 years old. He's had 38 fights. For a guy whose first fight was in 2002, that's not a huge number of fights when you look at Cowboy Cerrone at, 52 now, and not as many years active. So Shogun, while he has been around a ton of time, he has the resume, he has taken a lot of damage for sure, but he doesn't have the number of fights for the number of years that you would think he would have. So he's a little bit more fresh than you would think. And at 38, who knows, he could have 3-4 more years in the tank.
Yeah, it's going to come down to he has taken a lot of damage, and we don't like to see that in anybody. But with Shogun, you kind of know right out of the gate, if he gets backed up to the cage, he's in trouble. If he doesn't, and he's got a great shot of winning. That's always, in my opinion, been his Achilles heel in the UFC is whenever he gets backed up to the cage, he puts his back against the cage and just bites down on his mouthpiece and fires back and takes big shots. It's kind of a Russian roulette kind of a style when he's back against the cage. But yeah, Shogun, he could have 3 or 4 more years left, or like I said, he's at a point in his career to accomplish so much that he has nothing.
All right, next fighter to the scale, mixed martial arts royalty here, folks. He is the former UFC light heavyweight champion,
Here he is,
Mauricio
right
Shogun Rua.
Right on cue, Shogun, and 2 wins over Lil Nog. Beat Corey Anderson, John Vellante. These are recent fights, pretty recent.
Mm-hmm.
So he has won some big fights recently. His losses to Lionheart Smith, Ovince St. Preux, the Dan Henderson rematch, Chael Sonnen, Gustafsson, a lot of them. But, I mean, he lost the belt to Jones at UFC 128. The 2 fights with Machida, fought Chuck Liddell, Forrest Griffin, Overeem. I mean, just legend for Shogun as he steps on the scale.
205.5 for the legend, Shogun Rua.
205.5, and he never really looks the part. Like, he doesn't look big and buff and ripped and all those things, but certainly one of the best strikers in the history of the division and a former champion. And, you know, Jeff, as we sit here, I kind of want to get into the debate a little bit now, and I don't know how much I want to open it, but it makes me wonder what you think about Jon Jones' status as the greatest of all time, because when he beat Shogun and Machida and Rashad and Rampage, and Jon Jones has beaten 3 generations of fighters. Everyone who was a legend as he was coming in, everyone his age, including fellow undefeated fighter Ryan Bader and future 2-division champ of Bellator, when they were both young and undefeated. And now the young guys coming up at him. Jon Jones is definitely the greatest light heavyweight of all time, clearly, for the 2 DC victories, but you know, the all-time GOAT status being questioned lately with Khabib, and I don't think there's an argument. It's Jon Jones. I mean, and then it's GSP and Anderson Silva. That's what I think. I don't know how people just all of a sudden put Khabib at the top.
I agree with you. I think that Khabib retiring and now his retirement and kind of requesting to be put at the top influenced a lot of people on that voting panel, possibly, and a lot of fans. You know, I don't think that there's an argument that Jon Jones is the greatest of all time in any division. I do believe that there's validity in what Daniel Cormier says, although take it with a grain of salt. Jones has beat him twice, and they definitely don't get along. But you do have to kind of put, I don't know if I'd put an asterisk there, but I would definitely put a line or something because he has had positive tests, and he has been stripped of the title multiple times. As far as what he has done inside the cage and against who he has done it against, there's no argument whatsoever, in my opinion, on in-octagon performances or in-ring performances. Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. And then I agree with you. It would be George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, and you can even flip-flop them if you want to, in my opinion. Anderson's kind of fell off the wayside late in his career, but in their primes, I think that's the order. Jon Jones, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, and I'm not going to get upset if you put Anderson Silva above George St. Pierre. I wouldn't agree with that, but I'm not going to get too upset with it.
That's my top 3 right there, and I have to say, I mean, I really need to put Amanda Nunes in there somewhere. I have to, and over Valentina because she's beaten her twice, but she has beaten everyone and destroyed them, from Ronda to Holly to Miesha Tate, you know, and she's just taken everybody out who she could take out, and we're talking about legendary female fighters, and she has looked great against every one of them, dominating all of them.
Yes, you have to put Amanda in there, what she's accomplished in multiple weight classes and the way that she's done it. I mean, the closest fights were against Valentina. And
good
you know, and
point.
I think that speed has a lot to do with that with Amanda. Or in that particular matchup. But Amanda's dominated everybody. I mean, she ended people's reigns. You know, Ronda Rousey era ended with Holly Holm, but then, you know, Amanda came along and put an exclamation point on that, and then also took out Holly, and then Misha Tate at the time just destroyed her. I mean, I agree. You have to throw her up in there, and it's a shame that Valentina had to lose to her twice. But I wish they would go back to having a pound for pound list of just a pound for pound, or just a pound for pound list in mixed genders, not so much a men's top 10 and a women's top 10, because I think it gets clouded a little bit, because Amanda's up there right now, in my opinion, at number 2.
Who do you have one?
Jon Jones.
John still. So
Yeah.
John 1, Amanda 2. Yeah, and look, Emmitt Smith's the NFL's all-time rushing leader, but if you were starting a team with a running back in their prime, would you start with Emmitt Smith? Probably not. You know, you can make the argument that even Terrell Davis was better for a time, so the longevity is definitely a part of it, but when you're comparing primes like we were just doing, that's where Amanda really shines, and that's where GSP to come back and beat Bisping like he did was incredible. But it's almost crazy when we're talking about all-time pound for pounds that Khabib undefeated, the only undefeated one out of all of them, besides Jones, and I consider Jones to be undefeated, but it would be leaving Khabib at number 5 just based on the level of competition that the fighters in front of him faced and the number of title defenses. But to retire undefeated and to beat the likes of McGregor and to beat the likes of Gaethje, look, he fought everyone who was in front of him and he beat them. Poirier was on a roll, but it just doesn't have the sizzle of a Jones beating Shogun and Machida and Rashad and Rampage and Bader, and then coming through on the second half, and, you know, DC, of course, 2 times, and then Lionheart Smith and Reyes, and that's 3 generations of fighters that he beat. So we both agree there's no question there, but it's fun talking about this stuff, and we are seeing on this card Valentina Shevchenko, and we talked about Amanda Nunes being on that list. Well, Valentina's right there with her. 2 very close fights that she lost to Amanda, and 2 fights that people didn't think were very good fights, but both fighters so good, so technical, so skilled, so athletic that, you know, they could play out one of 2 ways. Either you have the greatest fights of all time, but both fighters really needing to be careful. We saw very methodical, very different types of fights because both fighters had to respect each other so much.
Amanda just has so much power, you know, so much power. You can't take the risk of taking too many shots from her. And then Valentina and her kicks, and then both of them are great in the clinch, and their ground and pound are just brutal on both sides. Yeah, you know, I consider Valentina one of the best fighters as far as skill set goes, man. If I could take her skill set and put it into other people, I mean, I have a hard time thinking that if a light heavyweight had Valentina's skill set, that they wouldn't give Jon Jones fits, if not beat him. And so, you know, I'm just looking at the skill set. And you know, for Valentina, I think that her career has been kind of defined by, she's that tweener weight. You know, she's not 135 pounds. She's not a big 125 pounder. You know, now she's in this weight class, and you're seeing her at her natural weight just dominating people. She was dominating people before in the higher weight classes until she met Amanda.
No doubt, and the fight that I want to see, and I was there in person for Joanna Jacek and Weili Zhang, and that's something that I really want to see. The point in so that Weili has some work to do at 115. I know that there are some things to take care of down there in that division, and you have some fighters down there who are working hard to earn shots, and you got Thug Rose and so many things. But, you know, Andrade moves up, and there's a potential challenger for Valentina, and she looked great in her debut in the division. And so you look at that, and you have to think maybe she's right there in the mix. But I at some point would like to see Weili Zhang and Valentina Shevchenko, because I think that would be one of the best fights we'd ever see.
Ooh, I agree with that. I don't know how that would go, because they pose very different things. Valentina's gonna, you know, on the outside's gonna have some success, but then yes, I agree. I want to see that fight. That's definitely, and you see women, until recently with the men, they jump around weight classes. That's been a problem with women's MMA because the divisions have been so thin for so long, and going way back to, you know, hook and shoot days in the very beginning, that the women they move around weight classes, and so it's kind of hard to judge who is the best one, because none of them are fighting in their actual weight class until now, particularly in the UFC.
Yeah, and even then, we don't have an atomweight. So a former atomweight champ in Invicta like Michelle Waterson's fighting too heavy, and who knows what she could do if she could fight at her true weight. And it's too. And when you think of Valentina Shevchenko, she had a fight at 135 a bunch of times, and that's not her weight class. And then she goes back to 125 where she belongs and she dominates. And we saw a lot of issues with this with Cyborg, having issues trying to get opponents for her because of her weight. And it's just it was thin, but it's developing so much worldwide, Jeff, that there are a lot more opponents and a lot more formidable opponents for these fighters at the top, and they've paved the way. But like Ronda Rousey, everybody's shooting for them now. But Valentina, man, what, a 7 or an 8-time Muay Thai world champ and a silver medalist the other time she competed, and Jennifer Maia, a black belt in Muay Thai. And this is a matchup, we talk about Valentina's place on the list of all-time greats. This is not an easy fight for her and Jennifer Maia. This is no fight's an easy fight in the UFC, but Jennifer Maia, fans don't really know a lot about her. A lot of fans are going to see her this week who have never really even seen her before, but she from Brazil is not only super tough, she's a professional boxer and a Muay Thai black belt. This is going to be something where if you love striking and technical, methodical, outstanding striking, this is your fight.
Distance is going to play a huge factor in that fight, right? On the inside, you're going to see Jennifer have success. On the outside, I think you're going to see Valentina have success. In the clinch and on the ground, we're going to find out. But as far as the striking game, I agree. It's going to be a high-level, technical striking match, and I think distance is going to be a big key to who wins that fight.
Do you see Caitlin winning tomorrow, Jeff, or Calvillo? Well, Chookagian, interesting, and that's from Edgar Gonzalez. Thanks, Edgar, for the question. Well, Caitlin Chookagian actually beat and has a victory over Jennifer Maia. So Chookagian with a fight against Calvillo, that's a high level and just about a championship level fight in and of it's that one.
That's a tough matchup. I'm going to go with Caitlin, but I will not be surprised if Cynthia wins that fight. Cynthia's a gamer, man. I mean, she's in it. She takes the fight to you. It's going to be a very interesting fight, but I think that Caitlin is just at a better place right now in her career. I think that she's a little bit more polished, but we'll see, man. I've been wrong. I mean, I picked Matt Hughes to lose almost every fight he ever fought, and I've won like 2. It is a tough.
I told you guys, Jeff's an OG. Matt Hughes, one of the great champions of all time, but a strawweight and a flyweight as well. Calvillo has been, and she goes from alpha male to AA, so she's been training with some killers. And you look at Chookagian, I mean, she does have the win over Maia, and she is something else as a fighter as well. And a girl who, look, is she a championship level fighter? We'll see. I mean, that loss to Jessica Andrade just recently was a tough one, but Andrade really looked good moving up that weight class, Jeff. And Valentina beat her. TKO, elbows and punches. That was UFC 247. I believe that was in Houston. And that was one of the last fights, if I'm not mistaken, before the pandemic hit. And wasn't that the Jon Jones Reyes card, Valentina and Caitlin? It was, right?
I'll just pull that up.
I think it was. Valentina. Yep, UFC 247 in Houston. It was. And, she's got a win over Jennifer Maia. She's beaten Calderwood, Alexis Davis, and a lot of people thought she was going to handle Andrade when she came up, and Andrade did a great job. So Caitlin and Calvillo, I tended to agree. Caitlin against Calvillo, you would pick Caitlin 9 times out of 10 for sure in this fight, and certainly coming off a loss that was a finish that she wasn't expecting, that it was a body shot that got her from Andrade too, and as a tough girl like that didn't sit well. So I think she's going to come in with a little extra chip on her shoulder. And for Calvillo coming in off missing that last fight against Lauren Murphy and feeling better again, I don't know. I think I'm with you. I'm going Caitlin on this one, Edgar.
Yeah, it's going to be I mean, Caitlin only loses to the top, right? And so that's part of why I faced that on there, because Cynthia's kind of she's a wild card right now, and we'll see. Is she capable of beating Caitlin? Absolutely. I just think that Caitlin only loses to the top people in the world, and so Cynthia's going to have to show tomorrow night that she's one of the top people in the world.
That's a great point, because Andrade is definitely one of the top fighters in the world. And I mean, what a force to be reckoned with in her new weight class at 125, moving up, a former champ. And, that second fight against Thug Rose, a little bit controversial. I thought Rose won, Namajunas, and she was winning the first fight too before the slams. So Thug Rose looking like a winner for sure down at 15, and can't wait to see her and Weili Zhang. But when you look at this particular division, 125 with Valentina, she's got to beat Maya, of course, but Andrade is a legitimate threat for that belt.
Oh yeah, I mean, talk about power and aggression. Yes, she is definitely a threat. She's an immediate contender in there, and like you brought up her last fight. She's always going to be a danger to deal with, no matter who she's fighting. I don't care who you pick. Whenever Jessica's fighting, you in the back of your mind, this girl can end it in with one exchange.
No doubt about that. Absolutely zero doubt. And it's a great division overall with Valentina at the top. And you're thinking, hey, maybe she's running out of challengers, but she has beaten some outstanding fighters. It is not something where, hey, when we talked about the men's 125 division earlier, and it's almost like you win a couple fights, you get a title shot over the years because they're running out of bodies to put in there, and you get an opportunity. And that's weighed into some factored into some decisions for fighters saying, hey, should I fight at 25 or 35? Well, 25 is a clearer path to the title, to a title shot at least. And in the women's division at 125, there are a lot more fighters on that side, obviously for obvious reasons. But when you look at that division and the fighters who Valentina has beaten, it's not necessarily a case of those fighters not being ready or those fighters not being world class themselves. It just speaks to her dominance and how great she really is.
Oh, I agree. I mean, you can't. You never know. I mean, everybody goes in and thinks that they can beat Valentina until you get in there, right? And you don't know on what level that you're at in your career, in your skill set, and your training and everything until you face somebody like that. And so there's a lot of unknowns. But Valentina's, yeah, I'm high on her. I think she's one of the best fighters in the world as far as being well-rounded. I don't see any flaws in her game, to be honest with you. So it's just a matter of beating her to the punch and putting her in uncomfortable positions, in my opinion, is the only way to really kind of beat her, or do what Amanda did, and you just kind of exchange with her and battle it out and eke by a split decision.
Yeah, and of course the decisions were unanimous in a split. The losses to Amanda Nunes, and that third loss for Valentina was Liz Carmouche, and it was a doctor stoppage, and that was in Oklahoma at C3 Fights. That was before they were in the UFC. So that was her third loss. She's beaten Joanna Jacek 3 times, once for the belt in the UFC and twice in Muay Thai along the way. She's beaten Holly Holm. She's beaten Pena. You look, Jessica Ai, Carmouche in the UFC to avenge, and who could forget that one? I mean, that one was the what was the one in Chicago? That was Jessica Ai, the head kick on the Cejudo Moraes card. Unbelievable win for her there. And obviously the TKO, the elbows and punches in Houston earlier this year against Shukagian, and to beat the most elite fighters in the world, and that split decision against Amanda really could have gone either way. So she could be 1-1 against who everybody thinks is the greatest female fighter of all time. So it's almost like a 1A and 1B. Clearly Amanda's number one, having beaten her twice. But also you think about the fact that Valentina was up in Amanda's weight class both times. You have to factor that in. So that's why I say 1A, 1B. But either way, I think we're going to look back. And I love Ronda Rousey. One of my favorite moments in my career was an interview with her. What she did for the sport, what she did for girls everywhere, including my daughter, can never be discounted. But when everybody started gunning for her, the level was raised. And then you saw girls come along like Valentina and Amanda and enter their primes, who have just taken it to such a high level. And when we look back in the history books, Jeff Kane, and I'm big on that. I'm getting older. I'm 48, a little long in the tooth or the beard, whatever you want to call it. These two little white horns coming down. But we've been around a long time. We're going to look back at the golden age of the women's division. Tina Shevchenko, Ronda Rousey, and Cyborg.
Oh yeah. I mean, Ronda Rousey completely. I mean, there was, Hook and Shoot is in Evansville, Indiana. It's 45 minutes north from me, and so I've got to see women's MMA at its. They were putting on all women fight cards when it was unheard of, and so I've got to see. And I followed women's MMA from its very beginnings, and the highest point of women's MMA, in my opinion, is kind of right now, or we just exited it with Ronda Rousey. But Amanda's kind of taken that, and then Valentina and Joanna and Thug Rose, and it's completely. Yes, and now it's got a foothold in the UFC. Before Ronda, I felt like when she came to the UFC and was the first female fighter signed, it was almost in a way, I don't want to say gimmick, but I felt like the public viewed it that way. Like it was questionable whether women would be a stay in the UFC or if it was just kind of a one-off thing for Ronda Rousey. And once Ronda left, women's MMA would go back to not being in the UFC. Well, that didn't happen. Ronda opened the door for all of these divisions. Love Ronda or hate Ronda, she did do that.
She did. Absolutely did. And amazing I mean, you look at the accomplishments and what she did for the sport. When Dana was saying there'll never be female fighters in the UFC, and he meant that. And it was Ronda Rousey who changed his mind in a conversation. We've heard the story. But when you look at what's happened since then, I was in the building in March, and I left Vegas the day before they shut it down in March. And it was the last event still with fans. Izzy and Romero, which was, maybe fairly, unfairly, whatever. People didn't like that fight. And the co-main event saved the night. Joanna and Wei Li, the electricity that was in the air for that fight, the level and the caliber of fight that we saw, that was one of the highlights of my career covering the UFC. That, along with Ronda and Amanda, the electricity in the building that you could just feel going through your whole body.
Welterweight division
as we get ready for another fighter to hit the scale. Didn't catch the name because I was still babbling. Sorry, guys.
The welterweight. I did catch that.
Well, we know it's not Mike Perry.
No.
Even. 170, the official weight for Nicholas Dalby.
Nicholas Dalby, 170 even. Jeff, as he gets set to take on, where is it? On my fight card. My eyes are Nicholas Dalby. Daniel Rodriguez. That's a good one at welterweight on the prelims. First one on the main prelims.
Yep, I see it now. I was skipping over it. It's the first one, and so you skip over to the early prelims. Yes, that's a good fight, man. With 170, so we've had 17 fighters weigh in so far. Got 7 more to go, and who knows? But you mentioned Mike Perry just for a second, and I wanted to go back. What do you think about his unusual weight cutting? I mean, he's basically saying, I'm going to cut 20 pounds at the last minute.
I mean, if anyone can do it, he can. I mean, he had his girlfriend cornering him. He's been unconventional with a lot of things. But one thing's for sure is you can say a lot of things about Platinum Perry, and I don't know him well enough personally to say anything about any of the stuff that he's been through in his life. But I can say, as a fighter, he's a consummate professional. So if he says he's going to cut it, then I believe he's going to cut it.
No, I believe he's going to cut it.
Otherwise, right?
I have no doubt he's going to step on that scale here shortly and make weight. It's just incredible to see people. It's something we don't see that much anymore. It's something we used to see all the time, but you don't see people cut 20 pounds at the last minute before weigh-ins as much anymore. You do, but it's just not as common as it used to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
No, not at all, Jeff, and that's a great point. I want to say something about Dalby real quick. He has a win over Alex Oliveira, which is his biggest win in his career. His opponent, Rodriguez, has a win over Tim Means, who's also on this card. But he had a 3-fight losing streak in Cage Warriors, 2 in the UFC, 1 in Cage Warriors, that saw him get, sent back from the UFC. Hasn't lost a fight since then. There's a couple of no contests, as we have another fighter on the scale. But great job by Dalby with the comeback to be back in the UFC and doing well here.
125.5, the official weight for Brandon Royval.
Brandon Royval on the scale, weighing in for Brandon Moreno. I like this as a fight and a great opportunity for Royval, who just competed recently and had a great performance in Vegas. Or was it on Fight Island? I can't. They're all blending together now.
Yeah, they all blend together now. I don't know right off the top of my head, but that's an exciting fight, man. That's one of the fight that right there is a fight of the night candidate for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think it was, when was it? God, I'm getting so old. I've been to so many fights now. Got to stop saying that, but it's true. I believe he was on that card. This is 2017 or 18. No? Oh, never mind.
All right, next fighter to the scale just so happens to be his opponent. He is also the #1 ranked flyweight contender in the world, Brandon Moreno.
Brandon Moreno, ranked #1. And obviously, Jussier would have a claim to a title shot, but if he wins this fight, you got to think Brandon Moreno is going to get the title shot as he gets set to step on the scale here, Jeff.
I don't know how you would overlook him for that. Yeah, if he gets a win here, if he's already the number one ranked, it's just a matter of getting this win under his belt, and he's got to be the next one for a title fight.
Unless, he has wins over Kai Kara France and Jussier recently. Sorry, Jeff.
No, I say this is the fight game, and the most deserving doesn't always get it. It's a lot of it has to do with who's available and what fight card they're trying to fill, and a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. But yeah, he's your logical choice if he wins on Saturday to get the next title fight.
Yeah, no doubt. As he gets set to step on the scale here, a couple of big wins he's coming off of. Had a 2-fight losing streak a while back in 2017 and 18. But since then, he's won 3 out of 4, had a draw.
125, the official weight for the Assassin Baby, Brandon Moreno.
The Assassin Baby, Brandon Moreno, right at 125.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've been.
And I got to give a shout out, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, buddy. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Tony Diaz, who's been working with Moreno up in Vegas. Says he looks great. Tony training fighters out of Extreme Couture. Was with Eric Anders when I interviewed him last week. So shout out to Tony and all the work he does. He does so much with fighters who come into town in Vegas to help them stay sharp and train, even if he's not one of their quote-unquote coaches.
Shout out.
We see that a lot in our sport. Yeah,
we do. But I was going back to the losing streaks. We've been around the sport long enough that people work on different things, and so sometimes you get in the middle of your career where you go on this long win streak, and then things weren't quite clicking, and you just hadn't put it all together yet. You are improving as a fighter, but you could take a couple of losses, but I think that's where you find the real fighter. The person that can come back from 3 losses in a row and then put back together a winning streak, that takes a phenomenal amount of focus and determination and self-belief in yourself, because it's in a row, right? You're confident, sure, and able to put that behind you and come back from it is huge. But I think that a lot of fight fans don't realize the path that these fighters take. You're always trying to improve, and sometimes you hit plateaus, right? That's when you take some losses.
Yep, and the psychology of it all is what's so astounding to me, because I'm all about inspiration and inspiring stories and people coming back. And, Jeff Kane, while you're talking about that, it just makes me think of the mentality that you have to put a loss behind you, especially a bad loss. And so many fighters, so many athletes, so many of us as humans, so many people have not been able to do that. And when you see a fighter be able to do that and fall down and get back up and fall down and overcome it, and not just losses, injuries like Dominic Cruz, for example, keep coming back. Jon Jones continuously getting in his own way, but still coming back and winning. It takes a special person on the inside. That's where it comes from. It comes from your heart and it comes from your mind inside of you to be able these guys have. And that might be my favorite part about this sport, is seeing the test of human will and character and really everything you have inside of you and everything you've worked for your whole life. What are you going to do? Are you going to curl up in a ball and go away, or are you going to come back better and stronger? And so many of the fighters that we've seen on this card today weighing in, they epitomize that warriors and the comeback mentality.
100%, man. I mean, when you put everything, every ounce of your being into accomplishing something and then come up short, I don't care if fight business or not, that ruins people. It ruins people. You see people not come back from that. And in the fight game, you see people come back from it regularly. It's one of the most beautiful things about the fight game that separates it from other sports, in my opinion, is you get to see these triumphs and then these huge falls and then climb back up the mountain. I mean, you don't see it out of everyone, but you definitely see it pretty regularly in the fight game, and that's what separates the legends from the not. I mean, look at we talked about Shogun Rua earlier. He's back on this card, going to run that one back, and he's a guy who's been at the top of the game and suffered devastating defeats in front of millions of people, and then came back and wins titles.
Yeah, and when I think about Shogun, and I think about guys like Renan Barão and Anderson Silva, and people can say, hey, they're paycheck fighters at a certain point. And I disagree with that. To have been the greatest in the world, to have been a champion or a top contender and then your time has passed at that level, but you still keep competing time in and time out and year out. I have so much respect for fighters like Shogun. He's never going to have the belt again. He knows it. We all know it, but he loves the sport. He loves competing. And to me, that's just as impressive of a comeback and a continuation of a career. When you've been knocked off the top of the mountain or when you've had your chance to reach it, that ship is sailed, but you still keep competing and finding that desire and the determination to test yourself, to practice every single day, to train, to stay in shape, even though you know the ultimate goal that you came into the sport with is pretty much out of your reach at that point. That's incredible. And Shogun deserves to be commended for that, for sure.
Yeah, I think that Shogun knows. Now, a lot of these guys definitely think that they still can do it, and I'm sure Shogun does. You know, he probably thinks he could. There's a path to a title shot somewhere left in there. You know, because that's just the mentality, particularly of him. But yes, I think that he's got the realization to know that his best days are behind him. Let's just put it that way. His best fighting days are behind him. And moving forward, it's about the matchups. It's about personal accomplishment and overcoming things. And like you said, just proving you can still do it. Plus, it's your lifestyle. Chuck Liddell and I were close at one time. And when he retired, after about a year at retirement, I talked to him. And you know, it's hard to walk away from walking out of that tunnel and having 20,000 fans scream for you, you know, and to land that knockout and silence a building. You know, it's almost addictive. It's an addictive feeling like a rock star gets, you know. There's a reason why Mick Jagger is still staggering around the stage at 97 years old, you know. It's hard to walk away.
It's hard to walk away. And you know what? When you talk about guys like the Iceman, it reminds me of that last fight against Tito. And, you know, Tito acting like he beat him in his prime, but it then makes me think about Roy Jones and Mike Tyson. There's a market for those fights. I don't want to see him, but that's another story.
Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez.
I mean, do you really want to see Jordan and Barkley play one-on-one right now? No. Do you want to see Roy Jones fight Mike Tyson? I don't. I have zero desire. I'd rather watch I'll hold that to myself, but let's just say I won't be watching that fight.
Well, you enter spectacle. You enter the realm of spectacle instead of sport.
That's a great point.
170.5, the official weight for Daniel Rodriguez.
170.5 for Daniel Rodriguez, and that's a good fight too. That's Nicholas Dalby. Rodriguez has a win over Tim Means, who's on this card, and him and Dalby looking to take a big step up in the rankings in this fight. And you know, he's on an incredible win streak. He hasn't lost since Combate 19 Queen Warriors, but he's beaten Tim Means, Dwight Grant last time out by KO on the Munoz Edgar card. So this is a good fight, Rodriguez and Dalby.
And it's a good fight card to showcase, you know, that a lot of these guys, you know, people pay attention to the two title fights and the number one contender matches and the bigger names. But a lot of these people are just trying to showcase their skill set on this card, grab the attention of the UFC matchmakers, grab the attention of the fans and say, hey, I want to see that guy against a top 10 opponent. And then you know how it goes. Careers are made from there.
Thank you, Maurice, for the comment. This is going to be one of the most top viewed weigh-ins. I think he means because of our show, Jeff. So thank you. Either that or he's being sarcastic because of the 255 card not being the one that has all the sizzle. You know, when you see Stipe and DC at the top of a card, or McGregor and Poirier at the top of a card, or Khabib and Gaethje at the top of a card, this one isn't going to have that sizzle. But every card's not going to have that sizzle. But Valentina Shevchenko has quietly become every bit the champion of anyone we've mentioned, and Figueiredo has a chance to be, basing it off his performances that we've seen in the octagon recently and throughout his career, and knowing his story and his skill set, a beast in there. So don't sleep on this card. Middleweight division, Joaquin Buckley, right? Somebody weighed in this co-main event on the ESPN2, ESPN Plus prelims, right underneath Moreno and Royval at flyweight, which is the main event on the prelims. So Joaquin Buckley. Don't blink. Joaquin, don't blink Buckley. There's a good nickname, a new nickname for him. Look at him.
Whew.
Scary to think you had 15.
Yeah, it is.
182.5, the official weight for Joaquin Buckley.
There it is, Joaquin Buckley at 182.5. So obviously he doesn't have weight cutting issues and might back 10, but anything added to that is crazy. And who could forget his last time out, Jeff?
Yeah, no, definitely can't forget the last time out. Yeah, I'm a little surprised to him come in that far underweight. He looked phenomenal on the scale. I wonder if that was by design, if he just wants to, if he just didn't have to cut a lot of weight, or if he overcut today.
Interesting.
Maybe the
82
scale,
and a
maybe the
half.
scale in his, maybe the scale in his hotel room or something was off. Or, like I said, he could just be coming in lighter for tactical advantage. Who knows?
Yeah, against Jordan Wright. And we know that Buckley's got the explosiveness and the speed and all those things. But man, it's always interesting, the science of weight cutting, because basically what you're doing, and even worse in the old days, you're depleting all the water from your body. You're getting rid of all your water weight, and you're literally just sucking it out and putting it right back in. And it's timed down to the minute, even the second in some cases. And, when Cejudo would cut to 125, my Neuroforce 1 guys would be in there, and they'd be telling me all the stuff that he was doing just to get there. And these fighters will literally weigh in at 125 or 124 and a half or whatever weight class it is. And it's at that moment. They wouldn't weigh that 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after. It's literally that much of a science that you're getting it down to the minute in some cases to deplete all that water out, suck it all out, and then throw it all back on in 24 hours to give your best performance. And that's why there was such an issue all those years ago, Jeff, of having the weigh-ins later in the day and not giving fighters enough time to properly rehydrate and get back to normal, because then the fighters who are training for weeks and months for this fight, but then the weight cut affects their performance. And it's something that until there are more regulations to keep fighters close to their normal, quote unquote, walk around weight, you're going to see until the end of time, unless something's done about it, which is kind of what CSAC was doing with Paulo Costa and saying you have to weigh in within a certain percentage the next day. So it's always fascinating to me talking about weight cuts.
Yeah, and to be around the sport as we've seen the evolution of weight cuts, right? Where before it was kind of the Wild West, and then before the USADA testing and everything, a lot of stuff went on. But now it is down to a science. It's down to the minute. It's down to just hitting that mark and then rehydrating back up. But hey, you want to talk about finding out how tough somebody is? Watch them cut that last pound in a hard weight cut. You're going to find you'll see the toughest men in the world break down, and you'll see, how tough they really are.
I was behind the scenes. I've been lucky a few times to shadow fighters and be there for I was with Paulo Costa, Henry Cejudo, Captain Eric Albarracin, and all those guys in Anaheim last year when Stipe fought DC. Or was it Stipe DC? Yeah, and it was no. Was it? Yeah, it was Stipe DC2, and it was Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa. And I was there for Paulo's weight cut, and I was in the room with him while he was doing it. He had a sauna suit on. He had towels all over him. He was laying on the floor in a puddle of sweat after working out over and over again. And he literally, and this was the day before, the night before he weighed in. He had still about 12 more hours or more in front of him of that kind of, I mean, until you see it, Jeff, and you've seen it too, what these fighters go through to cut that weight. That is a great point, my friend. I would say that last pound can be as much a barometer of a fighter's toughness as the 5th round of a title fight, because it is tough to get that last pound.
Oh, and I'm sure we've seen people break people. We've seen it break people, but we've also seen them cut the pound, and then come out and have a phenomenal performance. But yeah, to watch somebody cut weight it's a really cruel thing to say. I've seen Cyborg cut weight, and it was awful. It was almost like I just wanted to throw in the towel. I mean, I swear that's what it was like. It's like, let's just stop. Just call the fight off and stop. But nope, she would make the weight and still go in there and fight. But to watch those people cut Mike Perry today, to watch him cut that 20th pound is going to be brutal.
Brutal, man. And, you think about guys who have had trouble with weight cuts. My buddy Kelvin Gastelum, before he found a home at middleweight, was having a tough time. We've seen so many fighters over the years. Khabib ended up in the hospital, one of the Ferguson fights, because of a weight cutting. Tim Means, who's on this card, collapsed in a sauna one time during a weight cut. I mean, I'm amazed more fighters haven't had either serious long-term damage or, God forbid, even passed away from it, because it is a vicious and brutal process at some points in time.
Yeah, I've always kind of said it's going to be interesting to see how many of these people develop kidney problems later in life. But
Oh man.
honestly, we've seen, through Olympic wrestling and other sports, it hasn't really been the case. But it shocks me that it hasn't been to see what they go through. And it's just not good on the body. Dehydration is not good on the body at all.
No.
But they do it to gain that little bit of advantage, right? That extra strength in the clinch, the extra weight on top, or whatever, the extra 3 pounds of pressure in a punch. All those things, when we're talking about this level of fighting, those are the differences, or can be the differences. Yeah, I wish that their weight cutting and the weigh-ins were different. The early weigh-ins are definitely a lot better than they used to be, giving you an extra, 6 or 7 hours or 8 hours to put back on the weight. And we've seen a lot of fighters recently kind of go up in weight class to fight at their natural weight to where they're not cutting a lot of weight. And I always thought that would be a bigger trend, but I've been thinking that for 15 years and it hasn't changed.
It isn't. It is until you. Aaron Simpson used to do that. My old partner on the radio, fighting at 185, and he literally walked around at 187, 188. And when he fought a guy like Hani Marquez, for example, he's 20 pounds heavier the night of the fight. And so you compete against enough people who are 15, 20 pounds heavier, then you realize I got to cut that amount of weight too, and make it an even playing field. But one of the things that I found fascinating, Jeff, was I was embedded with Team USA at the IMAF World Championships in 2016. One of the greatest weeks of it. That was the week Jones, forget when Anderson Silva stepped in. You fell apart that week with Jon Jones, but there were 3 fight cards. Eddie Alvarez and Dos Anjos, with Alvarez winning the belt. You had a Joanna headlining fight the next night. You had UFC 200, and I was embedded with Team USA at the convention center down the road in the World Championships. Well, it was really interesting to see the fighters from all over the world competing for world titles. They had to maintain weight within a pound or a pound. I can't remember if it was a pound and a half, but within a pound or a pound and a half every single day, and fight some of them to win a gold medal. So to cut 15, 20 pounds and keep it off for any truer form of competition, and someone who comes in, dries themselves out. It's almost like, freeze-dried food. You just inject that water back in, and boom, there it goes. Like you stick a new sponge in the water,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, since the IV rule, that changed everything. I mean, the science of weight cutting is it's night and day from what it was like, say, in the UFC 30s, to what it is now. It's night and day. And then you have people that specialize that in that, right? That teams are built around people who specialize, or some teams that specialize in weight cutting and getting it down. And you've seen their success. Mike Dolce comes to mind. That was kind of after his fighting career. That's kind of what happened with his career, is he went into the nutrition field and helped people cut weight left and right. And he's good at what he does. Yeah, weight cutting is always been fascinating to me. It's something I've never had to do, or not on purpose. I mean, day after 3-day music festival, yeah, I'm 15 pounds lighter, but not on purpose.
From Kentucky that weekend, Jeff. That's what that means. But how many fighters are we still waiting on? I haven't kept an official list here. I know we're still waiting to see Mike Perry.
We have had 21 weigh in. Let's see who we got.
So 5
Mike
more.
Perry. No, we've had 21 weigh in. So I think that is there 13 fights on this card?
12 fights.
Okay, so we have 3 more to weigh in according to my notes. And
3 more. So who's the third? Lipsky, Mike Perry, and who else are we missing?
Let me see those 2.
Scott, if you know, and you got that list in front of us, Scott
Has
Peterson.
Caitlin weighed in?
We haven't seen Caitlin, have we?
Yep. So there's your 3: Mike Perry, Caitlin, and who did you say?
Lipsky.
Yeah.
Limbs. Of course, Mike Perry taking on the Dirty Bird, Tim Means, in the Coco main at welterweight. Means replacing ruthless Robbie Lawler, the former champion, and Pagan is right beneath that fight against Calvillo, right before the Perry versus Means. The main card: Shogun Rua, Paul Craig, Chukagian, and Calvillo. Perry, Means, Shevchenko, Maia, Figueiredo, Perez. We have the championship fights locked in. All the fighters on weight. Nobody's missed weight so far. No issues. Nothing for UFC 255. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Kane. We have Scott Peterson on site. MMA Weekly. live coverage of the UFC 255 weigh-ins at the Apex in Vegas. Jeff, this has been fun. We need to do this for every pay-per-view card.
I'm game. I'm game. It's been a minute since I've done a weigh-in show. We used to do them all the time. It's just been a minute. Everything changes. The pandemic has changed the whole world. But MMA Weekly, we adapt and move forward. And here we got Scott Peterson on location. You and I doing a little breakdown, little analysis, a little rundown, updates on who has stepped on the scale. I'm getting excited. We get down now. I do want our viewers to know that this could take. You might see Perry walk out of here or 10 seconds remaining on the time to step on that scale. So we could be sitting here. We're kind of in limbo for a minute. Fighters could step up and step on the scale right here in a second, or it could be 30 minutes from now.
Yeah, we got plenty of time remaining, even though there's only 3 fighters left. I can't see the time in front of me. How much time's left, Jeff? I can't see the clock anywhere.
I do not see the clock. I have up there. Jared Gooden did weigh in. He weighed in at 171 pounds. So there was a graphic up. So everything else is right except for Jared.
That was a question from a viewer. He did weigh in.
Okay. Yeah, he weighed in 171 pounds. He weighed in.
Oh, it's 11:02. 11:02 my time. 10:02 Vegas time. So plenty of time left.
Okay. Yeah. Well, they got still another hour, right? Or 58 minutes?
This is where you could film a Snickers commercial, not going anywhere for a while. Insert sponsor here. If you have a product or a service that you want to promote, we're looking for sponsors for the show here and for our content, but especially if you have a product that promotes patience or like not going anywhere for a while, that would be a good product right now because you get a lot of time where you could be sitting around waiting for more fighters to weigh in. Is that Jon Anik? There's John. What's up, John?
It is Jon Anik.
Great play-by-play announcer and voice of the UFC and fellow New Englander, Jon Anik. I was like checking his eyebrow there or something. Look at we have the play-by-play voice of the UFC primping for us right in front of our camera. Good job, Scott. Michael D'Angelo, a lot of people with bold predictions about Chandler when he just performed. Oh, Mike Chandler coming in. Yeah, he comes in and immediately he's at the top of the division. People talking about a tournament, Jeff. And, I know Pitbull pretty well, and Pitbull finished Mike Chandler, Patricio, with another great finish last week. But Michael Chandler, I believe, has earned the right, just as Justin Gaethje did, to come in and face the top level performers in the division. Don't you think?
I agree. It's just like Eddie Alvarez did. It's this is a guy who's been at the top of the division outside of the UFC, and he's proven that he's one of the best people not in the UFC in that weight class. And so when he comes in here, he's not a prelim fighter. He deserves a top-ranked guy, and we'll see. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Michael Chandler. We're going to find out how he does against the top guys in the UFC. We know how he does against the top guys in Bellator. I don't have any reason to think that he won't be successful, but unfortunately for him, he's going to get thrown into the deep end of the pool right out of the gate.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was the question, I think, that spurred the question. Roman wanted to know, will it be Tony or Gaethje? Who will Michael Chandler? And look, Dana says Khabib's going to fight again. Right now, it's Tony Ferguson, it's Justin Gaethje, it's Dustin Poirier, it's Conor McGregor, it's Michael Chandler. And those are the guys. That's pretty stacked at the top. So insert fight there. Will it be Gaethje? Will it be Tony? I would like to see it be Tony Ferguson because for years I kind of felt like Tony Ferguson at the top of the division, hard to argue against him. I always felt like Tony would do really well against Khabib, but not against Gaethje, which he didn't do well against Gaethje. Styles make fights, and that was not a style that boded well for Tony. Plus, he cut weight twice for some bizarre reason, but he's Tony, and we love Tony. For Chandler, I would like to see it be Tony Ferguson in almost a title eliminator fight. Is Tony Ferguson going to stay in the title picture? Is Michael Chandler going to be in the title picture in the UFC? That, for me, would be the one I want to see.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the one that I want to see for stylistic reasons. I want to see how Tony bounces back, or if he does. And Tony's story is kind of, because I always thought Tony should have already had a title fight. He's like the Carl Parisian now. The guy who should have had a title fight,
Yeah, interim title against Kevin Lee, but not the same.
Yes, that's right. I forget about the interim title because I don't consider them titles. I forgot about the interim title. But yeah,
Richard says, Jeff, Michael Chandler hasn't earned anything yet. Stop it. Can you hear me? I think we have a little bit of a lag coming in. Somebody said Michael Chandler hasn't earned anything yet. Stop it.
Well, I suggest
I would beg to differ.
Go look at his resume. Look at his resume and get
Yeah.
back to him.
You look at his resume and look at what guys like Alvarez and Gaethje have done coming in with the same type. Look, Alvarez and Gaethje came in fighting big names right away too. Maybe not as high up in the quote unquote title picture, and they needed a body. Let's be honest. They needed someone there in case something happened with Khabib and Gaethje, and Chandler came along at the perfect time. That was more of a timing thing than anything else. It wasn't him just coming in and them calling him the man and giving him a title shot.
Yeah, I mean, the guy has a very impressive resume. I mean, he's coming off of a knockout win over the former lightweight champion, the UFC lightweight champion. I mean, I don't know what else he would have to do. If his record, if this were just UFC fights, he would be in the top of the division fighting a top 5 opponent in his next outing. And that's where he is. So I feel like he's earned that. I'm not giving him a title fight yet. I think he has to show his place in the UFC, but I think he has absolutely earned the right to face a top 5 ranked opponent. But I'm not the matchmaker. Uh-oh.
In that division, job gets fun. Shelby, a division like this, because you can. Pounds, is Mike Perry going to come in over Alex Jimenez? Alex M. Jimenez 87. Place your bets. Go. I think Platinum Perry is going to be maybe a pound over. I think he's going to make weight until he proves otherwise. I'm gonna say he makes weight. And here comes someone to the scale right now.
Yeah, I think Mike Perry's going to come in 1 pound overweight, which
All
is
right, next
legal.
fighter to the scale. She is the number 2 ranked contender of the UFC Women's Flyweight Division, Caitlin Chukadian.
Here comes Caitlin. Here comes Caitlin Chukadian taking on Cynthia Calvillo. Tough loss she's coming off against Jessica Andrade, the former 115 champ who came up to 125. Calvillo replaced against Lauren Murphy a few weeks back for undisclosed reasons. This is a good fight at flyweight. Let's see.
$125 3/4, the official weight for Caitlin Chukadian.
So clearly she needed the extra time, barely squeezes under, and now she's good to go.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they give them the window to weigh in. There she's come in just under. She had a little bit. She could have put on a 0.25 pounds there, but that's cutting it pretty close.
I do miss the days, Jeff, though, when the ceremonial weigh-ins were the official weigh-ins because of the, when you have the ceremonial weigh-ins now, you still get Joe Rogan when he's there, and you still get the experience of it, which is awesome. But not knowing what the fighters weighed during the ceremonial weigh-ins was pretty badass, even though the fighters needed that extra time. And you can't have the ceremonials in the morning because no one would go.
Yeah, I miss them for the same reasons that you do. First of all, I picked a lot of fights on how people looked on weigh-in day, because I've seen some people barely make it to the scale, and I'm like, oh, well, that changes everything. And then you didn't know, it's the unknown. And then, like I said, when people are dehydrated down and they're cutting weight, they're not in the best moods, and so the face-off and stare downs were always a little nuttier, in my opinion, when they did them that way. I miss it, but I for fighter safety, I wish that we even took more precautions than we do now. They are getting hit and kicked in the head, and hydration is huge. I would almost like them to weigh in. Well, I don't have a problem. I the way to make them stay with pounds in cycling and work.
We got a little bit of the on-site audio there. Haven't heard much of that today. It's been a quiet room as usual. Just the media is in there right now, and a lot of the media are actually in the tent outside the Apex. Only a few are allowed inside. Our guy Scott Peterson is one of them. So, Jeff, how long have you been with MMA Weekly again now?
Since we started, 2002.
From the beginning, 18 years, right?
2001. Yeah, 18 years. It's 18
you
years
and Ken
this
and
month.
Scott.
Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable, man.
Been around.
To be around that long. I remember you and Damon Martin doing some shows together.
Yeah, we did MMA Weekly Radio. We picked that up after Ryan's passing, and we did that for several years, and we do it on location. Had a lot of fun. with that. Damon's working elsewhere now, and we don't do the radio show anymore. But you brought that back a little bit, and yeah, man. I mean, you see a lot of stuff in a fight game over 18 years. I always just tell people it's 2 decades, man. It's 2 decades because it feels like 3. But yeah,
Well,
we've seen
18 years is right
a
when
lot of
Zuffa
things
came in.
change. Yeah. Yeah, I remember Dana's first event, Dana with hair. I have a picture of me with Dana with hair, which is strange to look at because I don't have wrinkles or gray, and he has hair.
Dana did not look good with hair, man. And people tell me now, like, being bald suits me, and thankfully it does because I didn't look so good with hair either. So Dana White and I are, at least we have that in common. 2 things. We're from New England, both of us, and we both look better bald.
Yeah, look, both of my brothers have shaved heads, and I jokingly have my mom's hair, so I have all kinds of hair. But both my older brother and younger brother they shave their head now because one of them has the U shape, and the other one just has such a bad receding hairline. And bald's been in for 20 years, man. People love
Bald
a
and
bald
beautiful, man. Like but I look at it this way: I have to have the beard. Dana pulls it off without the beard, which is tough to do, especially for a white guy. It's hard for a white guy to look good with a shaved head, especially a white guy with pale skin. But for me, I shaved my beard when I had, and so my daughter, who's 13, and I know you have a 7th grader. I have an 8th grader and a 6th grader, a daughter and a son. So I shaved my head and my beard, and I walk in the room, Jeff, and my daughter starts busting out her Shrek voice and going, Donkey, saying I look like Shrek. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna grow the beard back. I can't do it without the beard.
Yeah, nothing. Kids just are brutal, aren't they? Ryan does that to me
Brutal.
with my beard. Yeah, he's like, shave that off. You look like you're getting ready to be Santa Claus. And I'm like, come on, man.
I like the beard, man. So let's take a quick poll in the audience. What do you guys think of Jeff's beard? His kid's wrong. You got to keep that beard. I vote for the beard.
Well, what's weird about the beard is this is just laziness, right? I'm not even a big fan of facial hair, but I don't like shaving. So I go back and forth on a teeter-totter. Am I so lazy that I'm going to keep the facial hair, or does it bother me so much that I'm going to shave it? Clearly this week it's on there, and it'll stay until the wife puts her foot down and just says, you have to shave the beard.
Or if you were cutting weight, maybe Mike Perry's back there shaving his eyebrows, pulling out
I've seen a fighter shave their head to try to make weight. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember who that was, though.
Can you guys hear me?
Who was it just recently who had the haircut? Yes, Scott, we can hear you.
It sounds like he's about 7 pounds over, struggling to make weight. Mike Perry in the back.
Oh, good information. Are you live on the stream with that, Scott, or no?
Yes.
All right, so that's right from Scott Peterson on site, about 7 pounds over, and that's more than I would have thought. But man, Mike Perry's had a tough go of it recently. Starting to wonder a little bit, Jeff. Because he's such a great competitor, and fans love what he does in the octagon. There's no doubt about that. But it's been a tough go of it lately for Mike Perry, and I hope he's all right, man. I just, talking like he was talking, cutting 20 pounds last minute, and now here he is, apparently about 7 over.
Yeah, that's what worries me. I mean, we've seen fighters make this weight cut and do it successfully, but if it has to go without a hitch. If you get any hiccup in the plan, you're 7 pounds over, right? And so, and it looks like that's
where a small hiccup that turns big fast.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. 100% could be a little bitty problem that sets you off. And so he's 7 pounds over, and I know people are going to freak out. Oh, he's 7 pounds over. Look. It's not once he was 20 pounds over yesterday. He's cut 14 pounds. So it's not one of those cases where he's one of those fighters who just given up and stopped making weight, which really pisses me off as unprofessional and an advantage when you just start dumping water back in your system and saying, I'm not cutting it while your opponent is still cutting weight. I hate to see that. Mike Perry's not one of those people. He's back there struggling to make this weight, 7 pounds, unless he lops off an arm or something right now. But yeah, I don't know Mike Perry well enough to talk, but yeah, outside of the octagon and some things that he says have been strange lately. I'll just say that it's been strange, and so hopefully, he's just going through a weird phase right now, and he'll learn that this was a terrible idea to cut 20 pounds at the last minute. Because I don't see how getting on a bike and putting on the suits and all that's going to help him right now. He's not going to make weight. In fact, I would tell Mike Perry to stop cutting weight and start putting water back in and take the direction and see if they won't do this at a catch weight. And I'm sure that's what's going on.
I'm
behind
sure
the
they
scenes
will.
right now, right?
he gets within 5 pounds, maybe if he can drop those other 2 and get within 5, you feel comfortable. But if you're Tim Means, look, this isn't a title fight. You've been around a long time. You want your guy to make weight, but if you're Tim Means and you're going to get 20% of that purse, you're going, hey, just keep the fight on. Now my payday's bigger. So there's that for the opponent. And there's always the respect factor. And one thing for sure, with all the crap talking that goes on and the disrespect that sells fights and things that help, give you a mental edge during a fight, Mike Perry's still a fighter's fighter, bottom line. And so is Tim Means for that matter.
Yeah, and I agree. I like with what you said. If he can get within 5 pounds, because that's exactly what I'd be saying if I were Tim Means' camp right now. I will take this fight if he can get within 5 pounds. If he can't get within 5 pounds, get back to me. Yeah, and that just forces Mike Perry to cut a little more weight, and before you agree to that catchweight fight, and it kind of ensures that Mike isn't doing what I suggest he do right now and pick up a jug of water, Pedialyte, and start drinking it.
Perry just self-sabotaging himself, says Tim R. Thank you for the comment, Tim. Yeah, I mean, hard for me to judge. It would seem to that. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know him well enough. It does look like self-sabotage, but at the same time, he could have just thought that he could make it, and he's done it so many times before, and he thought he could do it again. Except, every day we're getting a little older, and those pounds don't come off quite as easy. So I don't know. Hopefully, we get this fight to go. Tim Means will accept it, and Mike Perry will reevaluate what he's doing. But I don't think this is going to affect Mike Perry's performance in the fight. I'll say that.
No, not at all. I mean, and that Mickey Gall's no slouch. He's not a title contender, obviously, but those losses to Luque and Jeff Neal back to back had lost 3 fouls. He did have a win over Paul Felder at 226, which was a good win for him. But just a guy who's going to come in and he's going to put on a good performance every time out. You're never going to be disappointed with his effort. He's going to try everything he can to win a fight. He's never a guy who's going to mail it in. You mentioned he's going to keep cutting this weight. You're not going to get him to stop. It's just a mentality. Pablo Ortega says Mike Perry versus Gastelum. They can fight over who can miss weight faster. Almost an unfair shot at Kelvin there. I'm going to stick up for my buddy because it's been a long time for him. But when he was trying to be a welterweight, he had his troubles, and he's had his troubles in the past. But look, until you walk a mile in someone's shoes, and I'm going to call out some fans here, and I don't mean to rip you. We appreciate your comment, but until you've done it, until you've cut weight, if you're a fighter and you have, I apologize. But if you're not and you haven't, then you need to understand the science of this. And we were talking about it a little earlier, Jeff. To make fun of someone for not cutting weight is literally, I mean, I don't want – look, you got to be a pro and you got to make it. I don't want to let them off the hook. But I also want to say if you're a regular dude – who's sitting there drinking beer and eating pizza, you shouldn't be talking about fighters cutting weight.
Yeah, look, jokes are jokes.
That's why
I get the humor in it. Everybody wants to be funny. And look, good joke. But Kelvin hasn't had a problem in a long time. And I wasn't around Kelvin. It looked like he changed weight classes and maybe overestimated how big he really was. But with Perry, like I said, Perry makes weight. This is an isolated incident, even if no matter what happens here today. So it's an isolated incident. We just have to figure out if this is because Mike Perry is having issues outside of the octagon, or if this is because Mike Perry sorely miscalculated a weight cut. And like I said, a little bitty thing can change the weight cut. Once you get thrown off the schedule of where you're supposed to be, then everything usually comes unraveled. That's just the way it is. And so we'll see, man. I think that this fight will still happen because Tim Means is going to let it happen, and he's going to get 20% of the purse, and then he's going to go out there and they're going to throw down, and Mike Perry's going to forget that he missed weight. But yeah, unless you've cut weight, I agree with what you're saying. But like I said, I appreciate jokes, and jokes are funny. And
yeah, they are.
Sports, you got to crack some jokes, and fighters are public figures, and so they're the brunt of a lot of these jokes. It's terrible, As soon as Jon Jones loses, he's going to be a meme. Michael Jordan, the GOAT of all time, is a crying meme on the internet.
The crying Jordan meme. The best meme of all time, the crying MJ.
Yeah. But if you haven't tried to cut weight, or at least witness someone and do it, man, it's a brutal thing. Mike Perry's struggling backstage right now. He's mad at himself.
No,
that the
he's questioning
promotion's
every
not
choice he's
happy
ever
with him.
made in his life. It is a brutal process. Sorry, Jeff, we have a little bit
Yeah.
of a lag. I think you're getting what I'm saying a few seconds after I'm saying it, so I apologize. But I definitely, there's just strange things going on with Mike Perry and Diego Sanchez out in New Mexico these days. Some human paranormal activity.
Yeah, Diego's always been a strange cat, but he's kind of out there right now. I did saw some aliens, a close encounter, in fact.
Yeah.
There's some fighters, and look, it's we've been through this before. I mentioned Carl Parisian before, not getting the title fight. He's a fighter that kind of had some issues that he had to deal with that prevented him from competing anymore. And your life is more important than the fight game. And
We
so
got the curtain coming out. Somebody's coming to weigh
Okay.
in. Looks like they're going to have to drop their pants.
Uh-oh, so here comes Scott Peterson with the news from on site. Is it Perry or Lipsky?
Don't know yet.
Lipsky and Antonina Shevchenko not official yet. Perry and Means not official yet for UFC 255. Everybody else is weighed in. On weight. Let's see.
Maybe a false
MMA
alarm.
Weekly. Live coverage right here. Could be a false alarm. Scott's on site. You can hear Scott. I don't need to repeat it. What's the overall mood like in there, Scott, when people are, I know, like, media people talk back and forth, or you hear little whispers about Perry right now?
Lipsky's next.
Lipsky.
Lipsky's next. I don't know if Scott can hear me. You just want to start swigging that body armor, Jeff, after that weigh. I love body armor anyway, but it's just the feeling when you're done, to be able to hydrate, to be able to eat something. You got to stay healthy. You can't eat too much too soon. But when you talk about jokes with the human body, weight cutting is violent. It can be very dangerous. And look, you got to be a pro and you got to make it. But it's a sensitive topic for me because I've seen, and you have too, I've seen the fighters struggling and questioning every choice they've ever made at that moment, including some of the biggest fighters in the world, especially them as they're getting ready for even title fights. It's like, man, but for a guy like Perry to just keep doing it over and over again and fight for the fans and fight for himself, and just one of those guys, just a pro's pro. And I hope he gets close. I'm happy for Tim Means that he's going to get more money, but I just hope Mike Perry's okay, and I hope we can keep this fight on the card, which it was a little bit cursed with Robbie Lawler falling off.
Yeah, I think we're going to keep the fight on the card. I just think that, and look, Mike Perry's back there right now, probably going back and forth of I can still make this, and then people telling him, dude, you're not going to make it. And so that's probably what he's going through right now, while his management is trying to cut the deal to make the fight go on as a catchweight. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes right now that people don't realize. When someone is having, there's a lot of phone and yeah, I hope Mike Perry's fine. This is an isolated incident. He just miscalculated. Thought he could cut more weight than he could, and then the next time out he'll be fine. But Mike Perry's actions and comments does kind of raise an eyebrow on where he's at mentally right now.
Pablo Ortega says Mike Perry was eating pizza and burgers just last week, taunting Tim Means. And, that's Mike Perry. That's what Jeff, you talked about that earlier, cutting last minute like this. And hey, I didn't see the picture you're talking about or the video he's talking about, but it's interesting for sure. It's definitely an interesting subject to talk about, and something that, as he's back there struggling and going through a gut-wrenching time right now, probably wishing he wasn't doing that as recently as last week.
Oh yeah, he's questioning everything now, right? He's questioning everything.
Do I believe in God? I do now. I believe in God right now.
Yeah, sometimes your belief in yourself kind of a little bit delusional for a second, and then reality bites you in the butt and humbles you, and that's probably what's happening to Mike Perry right now.
Man, well, we know he's got a little bit of time. Nothing worse than the body and mind failing you. Yeah, psychologically breaks them down big time. Tim R says that, yeah, for sure. And the day before a fight, look, Eric Anders last week missed it by 1.5 pounds, and he ended up in the hospital that night. So that's why when I say, please let this fight stay on the card. And, we want this fight. Means and Perry's a great fight on paper for sure. And I don't know. You just hope that, like you said, if you're Mike Perry, you start drinking water and Pedialyte and just take what it is right now and hope you can still make the fight so you don't risk health issues and you don't risk something like what happened with Anders. We don't know what it was that sent Anders to the hospital. But if that ends up happening to Mike Perry here and the fight's off the card, nobody wins.
Exactly. And look, there are doctors monitoring Mike Perry right now. Like whenever we start having issues cutting weight, all of a sudden we start taking vital signs, and there's going to come to a point where a doctor says you can no longer cut any more weight or not. But, that's a possibility right now, and then that's what you don't want. You don't want this to turn into a medical situation and a doctor intervening, because if a doctor intervenes, fights off.
That's a great point. Nobody trumps the doc.
No.
Nobody trumps the doc.
But I don't have any reason to believe this fight's not going to happen. I don't. Like I said, I think Michael just stop cutting weight and get out here and weigh in 5 pounds over, and then the fight will go on, and then and we'll deal with the fallout later. But like I said, I just hope right now he's in a situation where it's not going to become a medical issue, because we've seen so many fights. Khabib, that's probably one of the biggest ones. Khabib fell off a fight card the day of the weigh-ins because he couldn't make weight, or issues surrounding his weight cut. And so let's just hope Perry doesn't have a medical issue here and we can get the fight going. Because let's keep in mind, this is the fight game. These are human beings, and we don't want them to suffer any long-term damage over a weight cut.
No, and especially a fight like this with a guy like Perry, who has 20 total fights as a pro, 11 as an amateur, so over 30 plus some boxing. And Tim Means, he's way up over 40 plus fights. And these are two veterans who are going to give you the best they have, high-level guys for sure for a long time. And this is a fight that everyone wants to see happen. So let's not be negative about it. Let's pull, and I'm not talking to you, Jeff. Let's give Perry the benefit of the doubt. Let's pull for him here, because we all want to see this fight. It's easy to pile on someone when they're not doing what we think they should be doing. But bottom line is, all of us want to see this fight. There's not a person, if you have a heartbeat, and you're an MMA fan, there shouldn't be one of you who doesn't want to see this. So let's keep the energy going in that direction for Mike Perry right now. We need it. We need this fight on this card.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up if he's ever missed weight. And so I don't see him. He had a catch weight fight back in 2015, but I can't tell if that was just a catch weight fight or if somebody missed weight. But here's a guy who doesn't miss weight. That's what I'm saying, which also kind of raises the eyebrows about where he is mentally right now, because there's a guy who has fought on several fight cards, and that's his career, and he does not miss weight. And now all of a sudden, not only is he missing weight, by one.
He's some stuff going on in his personal life. Look, he won a UFC fight against a top-level competitor, and Mickey Gall's not a championship-level competitor, but he won a fight against a badass fighter with his girlfriend cornering him. Think about that. That is a badass individual, Mike Perry. We've seen him go to war over and over and over again. He has that credibility, without a doubt.
Yeah, he's always one punch away from winning any fight. I don't. But like I said, there's no pattern. There's no pattern here. This isn't a Gastelum situation, because at that time, Gastelum did have a pattern. He got rid of that pattern, learned, and moved on. But there's no pattern with Mike Perry here. This is a one-time miss weight, and so I don't think you can criticize him on too much of a level. Now, if he misses weight in his next fight, then we've got a power. We just have Mike Perry overweight. Probably doesn't look like he's going to make it. And we'll see what happens. But I don't think that we can go off on him about missing weight as if he's done this his whole career. I can't see where he's missed weight. And if I'm wrong, message us, throw up a comment and let me know where he missed weight. I might just be missing it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, of course, think he shouldn't be fighting, period, because of what happened in that bar in New Mexico and some things like that. But I don't think that's our choice to make. I don't think that anything's being done wrong here to let him compete. It's not my place to say. It's way below my pay grade too, but I do believe that sometimes also you have to think about the person. Now, this is where Antonio Brown comes to mind, for example, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now he destroyed a camera, I guess, allegedly last month in Florida. So at some point, you can't keep giving someone chances, and Perry certainly has earned them over the years. But if you were to take fighting away from him, or if you were to take football completely away from Antonio Brown, is there an argument to be made that society would be a lot worse off to have someone like that running around when they don't have the one thing that might be holding them together right now? And I don't want to say or make any assumptions about Perry, but I do know how much he loves to fight, and I do know how much he loves being a part of the game. And if you watched his interview after his last win over Mickey Gall, I mean, he loves being there. He loves competing. And you got to hope that he's going to get everything else squared away in his life and get everything sorted out. And there's always multiple sides to every story. So let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. Hope he makes it through this cut okay, and that we get to see the Dirt Means and Mike Perry, because that's a good fight, man. I mean, Tim Means good on the feet, long and lanky, very good with his ground, like Perry, and a good fight.
Yeah, it's a really good fight. And look, I'm not a person that you can't judge a person's whole life on one actions. Was Mike Perry in the wrong on the video that I saw? Sure looks like it. But I haven't, there are two sides to every story. I don't know. But we can't judge a man on one incident. Who hasn't gone out and acted like an idiot sometime? Maybe not done what he did.
I've done it so many times in my life, I could never. And I will say this too: if you're one of those big mouths out there who runs your mouth to someone out in public, whether you know they're a fighter or not, you better be prepared to cash that check, because there is going to come a time in your life when someone's going to make you. And if you're one of those people out there just chirp at people and think you're protected because no one can touch you, you might have to back it up at some point. And if you're running your mouth, some part of me still likes the old school street justice. I call it street justice with my kids. You get this stuff. When my kids fight and my ex-wife, oh, you got to stop them. I stop them. This is street justice right here. They need to learn this. If you're running your mouth, it's one thing about social media. People can run their mouth nonstop and not have to worry about getting a backhand across the face or worse. And it's created a society of people who sit back and take shots at everyone. And I don't want to make this political, and I won't. But the election was a huge example of that, one side or the other, and everybody just taking shots at everyone. I want to eliminate this culture if I can, or be a part of eliminating it, Jeff, that, just people talking crap about people nonstop all the time, whether it be in person, whether it be on social media. Everyone just wants to throw shade at people and throw insults at people. And I'm not all about that. And I think that it needs to stop. And I think that you see it all the time with UFC fans, and you see it all the time with UFC media. And I know it drives Dana up a wall, and it doesn't sit too well with me either.
Well, I think that we've forgotten how to disagree. Like you and I can disagree. And this is hypothetical, but Kelvin Gastelum. Let's just say I don't like Kevin Gastelum. We can agree and we can make points on why you like him, why I don't, and we can have a discussion and an argument and walk away without calling each other douchebags, insulting each other's wives and kids, and telling each other to die. That's it. So I think we've just forgotten how to disagree. And yeah, I agree that a lot of people, there's a big difference in disagreeing with someone and disrespecting someone, because disrespecting someone will get you an ass whipping. Disagreeing with someone shouldn't, and we've been around this sport. I cannot count the number of times a fan has walked up to a professional fighter and called them out, like to a fight, to their face. And I'm like, you do realize, like, he does this for a living. He's not watching TV. He doesn't think he can do this. He knows he can. And so I want to take what happened to Mike Perry with a grain of salt, because at some point, with people running their mouth, people are going to react. Now, I'm not saying Mike Perry was in the right, but I'm saying we can't judge him on one incident. And fighters are always called out by wannabe tough guys, or just legitimately tough guys trying to make a name for themselves.
A name for themselves. I remember one time I did a show with Ryan Bader at a venue in Arizona, and this big, giant, fat dude in a cowboy hat was talking crap to him the whole night. And we had a couple other big guys with us who weren't pro fighters, and we're like, dude, we'll whip your ass. You don't want to mess with him. I could take him. He ain't so bad. Like, everyone wants to say, like, not everyone, but you come across those people who want to challenge them. I like Charles Barkley's response when he threw the guy through the window in Orlando all those years ago, Jeff, when he looks right in the camera and he goes, America, let it be known, if you mess with me, I will whoop your ass. And that was Sir Charles' response to it. But, the people do think that, that, hey, this guy, you can't lose in the situation because I could beat him up, or, you're going to see like a situation where, that you could sue him and people baiting him for a lawsuit. That's why I like what Matt Serra did. And I love Matt Serra anyway, but when he just pulled the guy down on the ground and was choking him out in the restaurant, and I'm going to let you up, but I can't let you up. And I'm going to, that's why I love jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so many people have talked so much lately about how all the police in America should at least be a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. And I just saw James Krause say that recently on another show I watched. I think the What Happens Here podcast with Marcus Deegan. But interestingly enough, I like it because jiu-jitsu, you can diffuse almost any situation without major violence, and I'm always a fan of that. Unless it's in the octagon, as much violence as possible.
Yeah, there's that video of Tim Elliott doing the same thing in that restaurant with that one guy. He just takes the guy down and controls him, and nothing can happen. My son takes jiu-jitsu, and the reason why I got him in jiu-jitsu and because I have options of putting him in whatever martial art is you do not have to hurt someone in jiu-jitsu. In all other martial arts or most others, the object is to hurt them, and that's how you defuse the situation. Jiu-jitsu is unique in the fact that I don't have to defuse the situation. Like if I'm in karate, I have to kick you in the head. Muay Thai, I got a knee and elbow. I think jiu-jitsu is unique in the martial arts realm in its empathy, if that makes sense, and sympathy. And luckily for a lot of people, you can talk shit to a fighter and them not kick your butt because they know. But you're going to run across that one who's had a bad day or whatever and just decides to shut you up. So yeah, you definitely got to be careful. But I agree with you. There's a difference between disrespect and disagreement, and it seems like the line between the two have been blurred. And we just lose respect for people. And no, if you're not a professional fighter, you're not going to beat up a professional fighter. I always tell guys that. I've got friends that, after 3 or 4 drinks are like, I could take this guy. And I'm like, dude, you can't beat the 115-pound female champion. There's no way you're fighting Stipe Miocic. And so,
he ain't so bad.
Yeah, yeah. And I just have you ever taken a leg kick? I mean, because that's all. Just take one leg kick. That's all I suggest. Just go out to your local gym and just an average striker. Take a leg kick and then get back to me. Because that's enough. I mean, look, I'm not a fighter, and I make I don't pretend that I am. I know where I fit on the physical chain of things. And but then again, I don't call out fighters. I mean, I'll tell you, if you're an asshole, you're an asshole.
No, that's okay. You don't have to be a fighter to do that, and I love you for that, Jeff. Yeah. But I've been working my ass off. Number one, I got dumped this year, so of course there's the revenge factor, and you want to be your best self. I'm working out like a madman, putting on a lot of muscle, but I just don't want to be one of the wimpy guys that Dana's talking about in the media. So that's why when I interview Dana next time, I'm doing it a T-shirt, and he's not going to call me wimpy. That's my goal. So Dana, if you're watching, shot fired. That's it right there. Yeah. Dana's a good interview, man. Dana will answer your questions. That's what I always like that about Dana. Dana gets criticism from a few different sides, and I think some of it's warranted and some of it's not. But Dana's honest, man. We've asked Dana some tough questions over the years, and he don't even hesitate. He just answers them. And so, yeah, shout out to Dana White, who's been keeping this sport going through the pandemic. And open the door for other organizations that we see, Bellator, LFA, and all the other ones to come back and do the same thing. Not really even other fightings. The UFC was the first sport to come back. And so all of that, the NFL was a litmus test for all professional sports. And that was Dana White. That was Dana White's vision that did that. Dana White, call it his bullheadedness, his refusing to take no for an answer, but it worked. And it's worked since they took over the UFC, So, well, since he's been the president, because there's been a couple of owners, but yeah, man, Dana's done a great job. And people who used to say, "Oh, he's lucky he has Lorenzo." Well, he doesn't have Lorenzo anymore, and Lorenzo's great. He's a Hall of Fame businessman for sure. Ari Emanuel, no slouch though. But Dana White's he's gonna go down as one of the greatest executives in sports history. He's so reactive and screwed the pooch so bad on the Kaepernick situation. Could have squashed it years ago. Always active. I like Adam Silver. I like Dana White. It is easier for an individual sport, but look, when you go all the way across the world and have your own island, there was nothing that was going to stop this dude. He said in my interview with him, and you can see it on MMA Weekly. You can see it right here. He said we were building, and I think it was a hotel and their own facility, and I'm like, why stop there, dude? Just build a hospital on site. he was going to the point of complete self-containment with no need to rely on anyone else in the world to put these fights on. So if you're a fight fan, what he just did for you, the sport, there's no denying that.
Fight Island's incredible, isn't it? They should put a hospital. You should look at NASCAR. They have that infield medical center, which is a hospital. In
Scott
case,
was there.
Yeah, Scott was
Scott,
there.
can you hear us? Scott
Did
Peterson,
they have
can
a
you hear
hospital?
us? Come in, Scott. Scott, great Scott. Sean Connery tribute right there.
There you go.
Scott.
Do you know if they have
Legendary.
a hospital on Fight Island? I don't know that, but yeah, they need to have one on Fight Island.
I don't know, man. I guess Scott can't hear us. I was going to ask Scott what it was like because Scott was over there the first run on Fight Island. I haven't been there.
Yeah, I mean, they got to have one close because they transport people. But I'm with you. Why don't they have one like NASCAR, an infield medical center that's just right there?
And as I was saying, Dana, build a hospital at the Apex Hotel. Like, you don't need anyone, but who knows what's going to happen. The vaccines are 95% effective. Wait, Annex got the mic. Something's happening back there. We still are waiting on Lipsky, the opponent for Antonina Shevchenko, and Mike Perry.
Next fighter to the scale in the UFC's welterweight division, Platinum Mike Perry.
Here comes Mike Perry.
Okay.
All the drama will be ending in just a second. We're going to find out.
He's walking just fine.
Let's see.
$175.5, the official weight for Platinum Mike Perry.
He almost made it within 5. 175.5. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. We assume the fight will be on and means we'll get 20% of the purse, but we don't know for sure yet.
Mm-hmm. I'm just watching him because you know how dehydration does on people. Look, he walked to the scale on his own, didn't need any assistance, walked off. So maybe he had a little bit. He looks good there. So hopefully they did what I said, and started to rehydrate before you got into a situation where you couldn't fight. But he's made his way to the scale, made his way off the scale. He looked better than a lot of people I've seen, in this situation.
Yep, and everybody has a bad weight cut. If you look back through history, not everybody, but most fighters have had some trouble with that at one level or another, whether when they were amateurs, when they were first starting their pro careers. I've done a lot of work on the regional and local levels over the years, Jeff, and I, as a ring announcer and a play-by-play announcer, I've seen entire cards fall apart. I've seen matchmakers having to go like this, playing, well, this person can go here and we can catch these two, and just to get 5 or 6 fights on a card because of weight cutting issues. Very, very common on the local and regional level, and it really is a credit to these camps and these fight teams and these fighters in the UFC that there aren't so many more weight cutting issues when you talk about people cutting so much weight in such a short amount of time. It's amazing, mind-boggling. We talked about it a lot earlier in the show.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is when we look at this matchup, Tim Means weighed in third, weighed in at 171. Yep. We're an outer, and Perry just now stepped on the scale at 175.5. And that's what I was talking about earlier about making him get within the 5 pounds, because Tim Means is already up to 180 right now, or 177 or whatever it is. He's rehydrated.
That's a good point, because he was within 5 of Tim Means.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so
Means is 171, Perry's 175.5.
Yeah. But that's a huge deal. Tim Means has had an hour and a half to rehydrate, where Mike Perry is just now starting to rehydrate. And we'll see if he's into the fight tomorrow night. Look, I have to think that the fight's going to happen because Mike Perry did weigh in.
And the way close enough, it's going to happen. And if he's walking on his own, and like you said, you pointed that out and you were dead on. He's walking on his own. He looks okay in the eye test there. You would think that there are no serious issues with him medically right now, at least just we could speculate. He should be fine. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that fight goes on. And now we're just waiting on Ariane Lipsky to see and make that Antonina Shevchenko women's flyweight bout on the prelims official, and she's the last one.
Yep. It's 4.5 pounds is all Perry is over him. Now that's significant, but not really. Like I said, it all averages out now that Tim's getting to rehydrate before Mike and everything, I think that fight's going to go on. Tim Means is going to get 20% of his purse, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. But yeah, waiting on
And
Lipsky.
the old Pride guys are going 4.5 pounds. That's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. 4.5 pounds. Yeah, I've seen some weigh-ins where I'm pretty sure people were over that. That's the guy with the scale. Know what he was doing.
Oh, man. Excuse me, guys. I have no other way to do this eloquently. And forgive me, Scott and Jeff, but I have got to step aside for a moment and be right back.
All right. As he goes, we have had 23 of the 24 athletes competing tomorrow night weigh in. We're just waiting on Lipsky. Though everybody made weight except for Platinum Mike Perry, and he came in 4.5 pounds over the limit that he was supposed to, or that was allowed. So he weighed in at 175.5, just stepped on the scales. That's been the big news so far of the weigh-ins. Everybody's weighed in. We had a bunch of people weigh in early, and then now they're trickling in. People who are having a little more issues or cutting more weight. We're down to one fighter left. Everybody's made weight except for Platinum, and we'll see how it goes from there. We're down to one fighter, and it is 12:47 my time. That's what my watch says because I'm too lazy to set it to West Coast time, Pacific time. So they have 13 minutes. Lipsky has 13 minutes to get out here and weigh on the scale. So we might have a little bit of time here to feel. But maybe not. Because earlier, Scott Peterson's on location, and Lipsky was almost coming out to weigh in. And then maybe didn't, maybe felt like maybe wasn't going to make weight, and now it's going to. I'm not sure exactly what happened with that.
They brought out the I don't know what you would call it, the changing room that they put over the thing, but they haven't used it yet.
Okay, yeah. So the screen's ready, but I don't expect Lipsky to be that long. I was expecting Perry to be last, not Lipsky. You know. Yeah, there's the little changing area, the little UFC naked booth, I'll call it.
It's a good name for it.
Try to come out stripped down and see if they can't make the weight. See, that's much better than the old holding of the towel. You know, the holding of the towel almost had some bad things happen. I remember Gina Carano weighed in and had to strip down, and the guy for Strikeforce dropped the left side of the towel, and cameras went off like crazy. Luckily, no one caught anything. But the box is definitely more safe than the towel.
Yeah, it was funny back in the day that even the ring girls would be back there. It's like, on your best honor behavior, close your eyes.
Yeah. So I like the box. Some organizations use like the circle shower curtain, which I like that as well. So you just kind of step into the circle and the shower curtain closes so nobody can see you left, right, or front or behind.
Isn't that what Ralph Macchio, Karate Kid, went as Halloween? The shower curtain.
Yeah. And he poured that. Yeah. I've actually been watching, or I have a month ago or whatever. I've watched Cobra Kai. I've totally enjoyed it because now I'm showing my age because I was a Karate Kid. That was my generation.
That was the show.
And I think now I'm a big fan of Johnny and Ralph Macchio. I'm not sure about, man. I'm kind of hoping he gets kicked in the head at his car dealership.
What did I miss, guy? I haven't seen Cobra Kai. I haven't watched this show. I am a Karate Kid
are
guy,
you a
though.
karate? Oh, but didn't watch it. Watch it. It is absolutely great. I binge watched it. I couldn't stop watching it. All the characters are the same, and the storyline. They did an excellent job.
When we first saw that movie as a kid, and sorry guys, I had to run in the men's room, but my dad was Mr. Miyagi before Mr. Miyagi. Wash my car, wax it, paint my fence, sand fence, and I'm like, man, this looks like my dad here. Like he's like, but that was a great movie. Great movie.
Yeah, the Cobra
one of the
Kai's
classics
good,
of our whole childhood, right? It's up there.
Exactly. But they stayed true to the story. It's good. Like I said, it's definitely worth watching. And I hate remakes. I like the Halloween Rob Zombie one. That's like the only remake of a movie that I like. All the other sequels
A
and
Star is
remakes.
Born was pretty good.
Yeah. Now hold on. Yeah, Star Wars I just set aside separately because
No, Star is Born.
Yeah. Oh, A Star is Born. I'm sorry. I thought you said Star
The
Wars.
Bradley
Yes,
Cooper,
A Star
Lady
is Born.
Gaga, Star is Born was pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Bradley
I
Cooper
agree.
can
I
sing.
agree.
I mean, he's no Chris
Yes.
Christopherson, but he can sing.
hmm I agree. But yeah, I'm typically not a fan of remakes or sequels, but every now and then, yeah, like I said, I throw Star Wars out because Return of the Jedi was amazing.
Jaws 2.
Oh, so good.
Jaws
Jaws
2.
2.
They
Jaws
had to
2.
kill the
Wait a
shark
minute. Jaws
again.
1 was when he had him bite the electrical current, right? What was Jaws 2, Scott? Was it?
I don't know. It was just that bad.
Oh,
That they had
bad.
to. It was
Okay.
just that bad. They had to make a third one.
Yeah, it wasn't Sharknado.
Jaws 1 was so
God,
good.
it was.
So do you like the Rocky sequels? I think Rocky up to Rocky 4. How about that? We'll give Stallone 4 of them.
Yeah,
And Creed,
Rocky,
Creed 1 and Creed 2 are pretty good.
Yeah, they just had the little. Yeah, Rocky's one where I like the sequels to it. But very rarely is that the case. I don't, and we're remaking a lot of sitcoms and movies and stuff now, and I'm like, well, what are we doing? We know the storyline, you know. I don't know. It's like when Titanic was real big. I was like, you know how it ends, right? And people were
Boat
like,
sinks,
shut up,
move
dude.
on.
Yeah. But apparently there's a necklace and Rose, and I'm like, okay, I'll watch it. But I know how it ends.
I'll watch it, but I know how it ends. Just like those
Like
biopics, right?
Yeah, Apollo 13. I'm like, you do know that they make it back, right? Like,
You
this
do
is
know
all
that they make it
suspenseful and
back.
everything. They do make it back. Well, getting back to the
It's the
weigh-ins,
same
we're
thing-
still waiting on the one athlete. Go ahead.
When I watch old fights and you know who won, I find myself engrossed in it. I mean, I love watching all the old fights. You've been here 18 years with MMA Weekly. I mean, think back to 2002. What's the first fight that you remember standing out to you when you were working for MMA Weekly and you're like, man, all right, now I'm here. I'm in the big time.
Oh man, the first I don't remember. Well, the first big one that like I knew was with Tito and Ken, because that was such a huge event. Before that, UFC 37.5 with Vitor.
Okay.
And, because that was the number one contender match, and I didn't know if Chuck was going to win, and Vitor. Still, if I watch that fight again, I don't really know that Chuck won it, but he did knock him down there late. Good fights though, good fights. But yeah, UFC 40, man, I knew. I was like, holy crap, man, this is big. The sport blew up like I thought it would. That's the beauty of being in the sport as long as we are. We share that with Dana and some of the other people, as we had this undeniable belief that this was the greatest sport in the world, and if people would just see it, they would see, and it would grow, and that happened. But it didn't really start happening, in my opinion, until that UFC 40. I felt like UFC 40, I knew we were on the right road.
On the right road, but then it took mainstreamers coming in, Brock Lesnar, Kimbo Slice, then obviously Ronda and Conor. But when Kimbo went on Tough, the viewership went through the roof, and when Brock Lesnar came in, that's when the pay-per-view started doing 1 million buys. And so you kind of knew, like, all right, but Brock Lesnar brought all that attention to the sport. It looks like we might see Ariana Lipski here in a second.
Yeah, the commissioner's out at the scale. They have the little UFC box to weigh in, so she's close. That's or they wouldn't need that.
Still a couple minutes left in the window.
Mm-hmm.
In the weigh-in
Taking
portal.
It down to the wire. Yeah, taking it down to the wire, and which is not a bad not a bad idea.
Hey, we our test today, man. We can fill with the best of them, Jeff. We talked about movies. We talked about weight cuts. We talked about judging people and casting aspersions on other humans. We talked about fights. We talked about pound for pound all-time list, UFC history. What else what else? Here comes Jon Anik with the mics. So let's see. There's only one fighter left.
We talked about Jon Anik not mispronouncing. He does not mispronounce any fighters' names, no matter how hard or how many consonants in that last name.
He's so good. I asked Goldie because Goldie's got a unique perspective. I'm like, what's harder, hockey names or fighting names? And he couldn't answer. He's like, I had to think about that.
They're final both... fighter to weigh in this morning in the UFC women's flyweight division, Ariane Lipski.
Ariane Lipski.
Okay,
Here
they're
she
not
comes,
going to
and
use
she's
the
had
thing.
a long time. Taking on Antonina Shevchenko at flyweight.
126
Oh, she made it.
126
26
official weight
even for
Ariane
Lipski. We have a
Lipski.
fight.
Gave her full purse.
Yep, and she did absolutely nothing wrong here. She has the full window. She made it in time. Just took a little longer. Job by Ariane Lipski, and now Antonina Shevchenko's got her opponent locked in. Mike Perry and Tim Means. Perry weighed at 170.5, Means at 171, so within 5 of one another. Did they give any word on that, Jeff, while I was gone? Probably not, right?
No, they have not. Scott, if you hear anything from them, or maybe run and grab an official and make sure that fight's happening. I mean, I'm not going to say
Grab
for sure,
that
but
guy.
I'm pretty sure that fight's going to happen.
Yeah, nobody said anything yet.
All right.
Okay.
What's
I mean, we
what's
would have
going on
heard
up
if
there
it was
now, Scott?
off, typically, right? I mean, we would have known by now if that fight was off. It's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually Costello comes and tells us, so he just they must not know yet. They're probably still deciding.
And the Vegas Commission is not too bad when it comes to this. So they'll work. The Nevada Commission, I should say, not the Vegas
Adam
Commission.
from Las Vegas Review Journal just told me the Perry fight is on, and he's losing
Okay.
30% of his purse.
30%. Why 30?
Big 30.
Negotiated it.
I
I
thought it
would
was
say
20.
that that's Tim.
Usually,
Well,
yeah,
it
usually
is.
it is 20.
The commission. I'd have to say that they probably went into a negotiation with Tim Means, because Tim Means does not have to take that fight because Mike Perry breached contract by not making weight. And so to get him back in there, Tim Means probably said, I want another 10%. Perry agreed. That's what it looks like. It's a speculation on my part, but that's how I've seen these situations play out, where even more of their purse was negotiated to keep the fight going.
Jeff Kane, ladies and gentlemen, that's decades of experience right there. I love doing this with you, man. It's been a blast. I get an education sitting here. The viewers are lucky to hear from you. Scott's on site. I'm with UFC royalty here, man. A couple of decades with MMA Weekly since 2002. This month, 18 years. Unbelievable. Where does the time go?
All right, guys, I'm gonna have to break the camera down for the face-offs, so we'll have to end it.
Okay,
All right,
sign
so
us
there you
out.
have it. The boss tells us we got to go. Jeff, thank you, man. It's been great doing this. We'll do it again soon. Thank you, Scott. And thank you for watching MMA Weekly's live coverage of the UFC 255 weigh-ins.